C1409 Perks of Being a General. Chapter 1409 Perks of Being a General. 1409 Perks of Being a General. If you're done here, I will take you back, Su Jieqi said. Yuan looked at her with slightly raised eyebrows. Perhaps he was overthinking it, but he sensed a hint of irritation within Su Jieqi's voice, but he couldn't recall doing anything to annoy her. Yes, I am done here, he said a moment later. Su Jieqi looked at Senior Bai, who nodded, creating a portal before them the next second. This will take you back to the myriad of techniques, he said. Do you have any questions before you leave? Yuan pondered for a bit before asking, how do I come here without your help? Surely, there must be a way to enter the Celestial Overlord's headquarters without Senior Bai's assistance. Otherwise, that would make Senior Bai a gatekeeper. We have places spread throughout the 9 heavens with portals that lead to this place, though they only exist within the 6th heaven and above, said Senior Bai. But if you ever want to visit this place for whatever reason, you can just contact me through the myriad of techniques, he added. Yuan nodded, I see. Thank you. Until next time. Yuan walked through the portal the next moment, disappearing from the Celestial Overlord's headquarters and returning to the myriad of techniques. Have you guys found any suitable techniques? Yuan asked the others when he returned to their side. This place has an abundance of techniques. I can't believe such a treasure trove exists. She merely exclaimed, rendered speechless by the vast array of techniques available for purchase. Yuan looked at her, who was carrying over a dozen techniques in her arms, smiled, and said, that's an impressive amount of techniques you have there. She chuckled, don't worry, I'm not expecting you to pay for them. If they're below a certain rank, I can acquire them for free, he said. Really? They are all divine rank techniques, though. Probably, Yuan looked at Meishou and the others. Excluding Xiaohua, they all had 2 to 3 techniques in their grasp. Upon entering the 4th heaven, the volume of techniques accessible in the myriad of techniques had significantly expanded, unveiling numerous new and formidable skills for them to explore. Are you all ready? He asked. They nodded. Seeing this, Yuan guided them to the front desk, where a middle-aged man was overseeing the operations. This was his first time buying techniques from the myriad of techniques after he achieved the rank of general. He showed his symbol to the middle-aged man and asked, do I get any discounts? Even though Su Jieqi warned him to not show off his symbol until he increased his cultivation, he figured that it would be safe to do so within the myriad of techniques. The middle-aged man furrowed his brows upon seeing the symbol, casting a disapproving glare at Yuan while scrutinizing him from head to toe. You're a general within the Celestial Overlords? How come I don't recognize you? The middle-aged man spoke in a cold voice. He was a warrior in the faction, and had memorized all of the generals and above. Yet, he didn't recognize Yuan. Moreover, Yuan seemed clueless about his own privileges as a general. I'm a new member, and I was only recently promoted to the rank of general, said Yuan. The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes at Yuan, whose cultivation was simply too low to be part of the Celestial Overlords, much less a general there. The middle-aged man sighed a moment later. While uncommon, there are people like you from time to time, bold individuals who think they can fool the myriad of techniques. However, you are especially bold, to utter such ridiculous lies with a straight face. How can someone who just joined the faction become a general already? Yuan raised an eyebrow at his ominous words. The punishment for impersonating one of us is death, but I will give you a chance to admit your crime and apologize. The middle-aged man spoke in a calm voice, yet his gaze was cold and oozing with killing intent. Seeing this, Yuan sighed, what's the point of this symbol if nobody believes me? And don't you have a talisman that proves I am a member of the faction? That only proves you are a member, not a general. The middle-aged man calmly said. Yuan took away the symbol the next moment and retrieved a medallion from his spatial ring. Here. This is. The middle-aged man swallowed nervously at the sight of Senior Bai's medallion. Don't tell me you're going to say it's a fake. Yuan calmly said. The middle-aged man accepted the medallion into his hands, taking a moment to thoroughly inspect it. It's real. He muttered in a dazed voice. If you still have doubts, you can ask Senior Bai. That won't be necessary. I apologize for doubting you, General. May I have your name? Yuan. Then, General Yuan, allow me to give you a brief explanation of your privileges as a general. As a general, you are allowed to acquire any heaven rank and divine rank techniques from the myriad of techniques for free. Ancient rank techniques will have a 75% discount. Divine rank techniques are free for me? That's very generous. Yuan didn't expect the faction to be so generous. That may seem to be the case at first glance, but if you think about it, most generals have a cultivation of immortal ascension and beyond. At that level, divine rank techniques aren't as useful. The middle-aged man explained. Makes sense. Yuan nodded. It only seemed like a crazy privilege to him because he was still a spirit king in the fourth heaven, where divine rank techniques are still rare and valuable. In the upper heavens, however, they are not as valuable and sought after. Yuan turned to look at Shimei and the others and said, "You heard him. As long as it's not ancient rank, you can have them for free." No way. Shimei muttered in a dazed voice with a bewildered expression on her face. She had prepared to spend a fortune on her techniques, so it was baffling to hear that she wouldn't need to spend a coin on them. But, I won't complain. Shimei merrily walked over to the front desk and laid all of her techniques before the middle-aged man, creating a small mountain. C1410 Sacred Bracelet. Chapter 1410 Sacred Bracelet. 1410 Sacred Bracelet. After Shimei placed her techniques on the front desk, the others quickly followed. Mei Xiu had 2 techniques, Chu Liuxiang had 3, Li Jinxi had 3, and Lan Yingying had 2. In total, 26 divine rank techniques formed a small mountain in front of the middle-aged man, who wore a weird expression on his face. While it was fully within Yuan's privilege as a general to purchase so many divine rank techniques, it still felt weird to the middle-aged man, especially since he wasn't buying it for himself. Moreover, they were still within the fourth heaven, where divine rank techniques are precious. If Yuan wanted to abuse his privileges by selling these divine rank techniques as though they were candy, he would easily make a fortune. However, it would cause an uproar within the fourth heaven and catastrophic damages to the economy. If that were to happen, the higher-ups would not sit still, as such actions would hurt their faction's reputation and karma. After acquiring the techniques, they left the myriad of techniques and went to the nearest hotel, where they talked about their plans. I will be heading to the Vanishing Valley now. Unfortunately, I cannot bring any of you with me since I cannot guarantee your safety there, except Xiao Hua and Lan Yingying, who can reside safely within my Dantian. Yuan said to them. Normally, I would complain and follow you even if you refuse, but I have a lot of new techniques to learn, so I don't mind staying behind. Shimei said as she was already holding onto one of these techniques with an eager look on her face. I was already planning on staying behind to cultivate since we're still nowhere near capable enough. Chu Liuxiang said. Me too, Mei Xiu said. Are there any locations where we can train without any concerns about our surroundings? Li Jinxi asked. I'm not sure, but... Yuan lifted his head to look at the ceiling and called out, Dong Yi, are you here? There was no response. I guess it'll take him a little longer to come to the fourth heaven. Unlike Yuan and the others, Dong Yi did not have the luxury of traveling between the 9 heavens using the stairway to heaven because of his identity. I think the cultivator's haven may have something like that. Mei Xiu suddenly said. The usual spot, huh? Let's check it out. Chu Liuxiang nodded. They left the hotel shortly after and made their way to the cultivator's haven. Of course, we have training rooms specifically for those who wish to practice their techniques without worry. The receptionist said after being inquired by them. She led them to the basement, where a hallway of rooms was located. These rooms are reinforced with Tier 5 formations that can withstand attacks from even a spirit sovereign without any problems. The receptionist gave them a brief tour of one of these rooms. The interior was quite spacious with about 30 meters in width, 40 meters in length, and about 20 meters in height. There was even a bathroom available. Since he wasn't sure how long it would take him to return, Yuan handed the others enough money to use these rooms for half a year without any breaks. Naturally, he didn't actually think he would need that long. It was more of a precaution. Before leaving, Yuan retrieved the Abyss Piercer from his spatial ring and offered it Xiu. I want you to have this. This is. I don't even have the power to wield this bow. Xiu stared at the beautiful black bow in her grasp with a dumbfounded look on her face. I am well aware, but you'll eventually be able to wield it. Yuan smiled, and he continued, it even looks similar to my starry abyss. I think they were made with the same materials. Yuan showed his starry abyss, and sure enough, the blade looked like it was made with abyss crystal, the very same material used for the Abyss Piercer. Thank you. I will treasure it. Xiu said with a warm smile on her face. Before he left her training room, Xiu gave him a passionate kiss on the lips that lasted for several seconds. Yuan visited Lan Yingying last. Although she could have followed him, she decided to stay behind to train as well. While she was stronger than Li Jinxi and the others from Earth, she still fell behind Xiaohua and Xiaohua. Here, I want you to have this. Yuan handed the other treasure he acquired from the Celestial Overlord's treasury to her. A bracelet. Lan Yingying accepted the silver bracelet with a curious expression on her face. The moment she touched the bracelet, she sensed a connection with it, almost as though they were fated to be together. Sacred bracelet, grade, ancient, quality, peak, description, a beautiful bracelet forged in sacred fire. Increases the wearer's efficiency and power by 500% when using fire-related techniques. Its effects will double when using sacred fire. When Yuan saw this bracelet, he instantly thought of Lan Yingying, who could wield sacred fire. This bracelet will improve your sacred fire's efficiency and power, Yuan explained its effects to her. It boosts the power of my sacred fire? No wonder why the sacred fire in my body acted up with excitement when I touched it. Lan Yingying swallowed nervously as she stared at the glistening silver bracelet in her grasp. I don't know how to thank you, she said with a troubled look on her face. You don't need to repay me for it, really. Even if you say that, this treasure is too. Yuan suddenly placed his palm on her head and started aggressively rubbing it, causing her hair to fly everywhere. His random action left Lan Yingying speechless. Yuan chuckled at her appearance and said, don't even think about it. Lan Yingying slowly nodded her head, her face flushed with redness. After leaving Lan Yingying's room, Yuan left the cultivator's haven with Xiaohua by his side. Are you ready? He asked her. She nodded with a confident look on her face. Then let's head to the Vanishing Valley. C1411 Vanishing Valley. Chapter 1411 Vanishing Valley 1411 Vanishing Valley. After leaving the cultivator's haven with Xiaohua, Yuan went to find the teleportation device in their city. When he found it, Yuan approached the individual managing it and said, I'd like to travel to Black Fog City. Black Fog City? That's very far away from here, so it'll cost 200,000 spirit stones. The manager said 200,000, right? Here. Yuan paid the money without hesitation. The manager took a moment to count the spirit stones before nodding his head. All right, I have confirmed your payment. Give me a few minutes to adjust the device. As he waited for the device, Yuan recalled the directions Dong Yi had given him to the Vanishing Valley. A few minutes later, Yuan stepped through the teleportation device, traveling to the other side of the world in the blink of an eye. The instant he emerged from the portal, he was met with an eerie scene. His view was obstructed by a black fog that seemingly engulfed the entire city. The atmosphere was chilling, and it felt like he had already arrived at the Shadow Realm. Of course, Yuan had learned of this place before his arrival, so he wasn't shocked by the scene. The fog is thicker than I'd anticipated. Luckily, it doesn't have any harmful effects on the body. Still, how does one live in such an environment? He wondered to himself as he started walking north. While the black fog obstructed his vision, he had no issues seeing with his divine sense. When he used his divine sense to examine his surroundings, he sensed hundreds of thousands of presence within the city. Surprisingly, there were more residents than he anticipated. Due to the environment, the cost of living within the city was extremely low, making it an ideal place to live for those without money, and since the black fog was only aesthetically unpleasant and somewhat inconvenient, many people chose to live here despite the ghastly atmosphere. As for the black fog, it originated from the Vanishing Valley. Given the close proximity of Black Fog City to the Vanishing Valley, it was an unavoidable inconvenience. After leaving the city, Yuan flew high into the sky, where the fog couldn't reach, and he continued moving north. As he approached the Vanishing Valley, the black fog thickened and ascended higher into the air. Gradually, it began emitting a faint and unpleasant dusty smell. Yuan reacted by covering his body in a thin layer of spiritual energy, separating himself from the smell. A few days later, Yuan stopped moving when he noticed thousands of signs in the distance. Vanishing Valley ahead. Stay away. Turn around. Turn around. Turn around. Only death awaits those who ignore the warnings. Danger. 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 Thousands of such signs were positioned before the Vanishing Valley, spanning for miles and forming a bizarre barrier that couldn't be disregarded. If Yuan had come across this place by accident and seen these signs, he would have turned around without any hesitation. Unfortunately, he came here with a very specific goal in mind, and that goal was only achievable if he entered the Vanishing Valley. After taking a deep breath and mentally preparing himself, Yuan flew past the signs and entered the Vanishing Valley several miles ahead. The instant Yuan passed the tree line that was within the Vanishing Valley's territory, he sensed a subtle change in the atmosphere, almost like heads slipped through an invisible wall. He turned around to find that the tree lines he had just traversed had vanished entirely, replaced by an expansive emptiness stretching for countless miles. So this is the illusion that Dong Yi mentioned, huh? He mumbled in a low voice. Yuan didn't linger and continued moving forward. Unfortunately for him, there were no maps of the Vanishing Valley, so he could only wander aimlessly until he found something recognizable, such as the giant sword that Dong Yi had warned him about. However, he couldn't afford to travel too swiftly or recklessly, given the presence of innumerable magical beasts roaming the Vanishing Valley, with many capable of rivaling even immortal cultivators. Xiaohua left his Dantian shortly after they entered the Vanishing Valley, accompanying him by his side to ensure that he wouldn't feel alone in this dangerous land. Several hours into their journey, they encountered their first magical beast. Careful, there's a magical beast hidden within the fog about a mile away, Yuan said out loud. This magical beast resembled a giant toad. It had purple skin with large black needles on its back, almost like that of a porcupine. Spirit enlightenment. Yuan could tell its cultivation at a glance. That's a great violet toad, brother Yuan. The needles on its back are coated in a deadly poison that could kill a divine warrior expert in seconds, and it has the ability to shoot them out of its body like a projectile. Xiaohua said, showcasing her knowledge. Yuan nodded. He summoned the Empyrean Overlord and threw it at the great violet toad, killing it in a single hit. Ding! Huh! That toad was an elite boss? Yuan was not expecting to see an announcement for such a simple kill. Brother Yuan, you should salvage its needles. They are quite valuable even in the upper heavens. Xiaohua said to him afterward. Yuan nodded and collected the needles. Great violet toad's needle, material, description, very durable and contains deadly poison, Now that I have it in my hands, it kind of resembles the black anguish needle I acquired some time ago. Perhaps it was created with this? Yuan expressed his thoughts after seeing their familiarities. Most spiritual treasures are created with parts salvaged from magical beasts, so it's very likely. Xiaohua said. After storing the needles, they resumed their journey. Half an hour later. Another elite boss? Don't tell me all of the magical beasts in the Vanishing Valley are such entities. Yuan muttered in a dazed voice as he glared at the announcement with a weird look on his face. C1412 Elite Bosses. Chapter 1412 Elite Bosses. 1412 Elite Bosses. Not even half a day has passed since Yuan entered the Vanishing Valley. During this short amount of time, had killed 5 unique magical beasts, all of them releasing an announcement shortly after being slain. The players were bewildered by how many announcements were appearing that day, and all of them were related to player Yuan hunting elite bosses. Seeing how many unique elite bosses were being hunted so quickly, they wondered if Yuan had found a hidden dungeon filled with such bosses. However, even if they knew his location and wanted to follow him, none of these players were insane enough to enter the fourth heaven. While several thousand players have entered the fourth heaven, most of these people were scouters hired by others to gather information about the realm. Again? How many more announcements are we going to have to see before it stops? The players were already getting fed up with the spam. Unbeknownst to them, this was just the very beginning. Several more days came and went quickly while Yuan continued to wander the Vanishing Valley with Xiaohua by his side. During this time, he's encountered plenty of magical beasts at the level of Spirit Sovereign to Divine Grandmasters. He slew all of them except one, a red-eyed black lizard that had a cultivation base even he could not fathom. This lizard stood 20 meters tall and was the length of 3 school buses. Xiaohua recognized it as a tyrant lizard king, a very aggressive and vicious magical beast that could spit out bone-melting venom and destroy mountains with the swing of its tail. Yuan thought that he would stop finding so many unique magical beasts by now, but new magical beasts kept on appearing with barely any repeats, almost as though the Vanishing Valley was a zoo of exotic and powerful magical beasts. During these few days, Yuan's name would constantly appear in the sky, sometimes a dozen times in a single day. The players had grown so sick of seeing these announcements that they started outright ignoring them, acting as though they didn't exist. Unfortunately, because of this, some players who weren't Yuan and managed to receive an announcement would be completely ignored by the majority of players. Heavens, it's been 2 weeks now, and he's still finding new elite bosses to kill? Just where is he farming? Wang Xiuying stared at the sky with a slight smile on her face while she practiced her alchemy outdoors. Meanwhile, the internet blew up with speculations about the treasures Yuan had gotten after killing so many elite bosses. He must have a mountain of treasures by now. Fuck. I am so envious. The last time I fought an elite boss was 3 months ago, and I couldn't even defeat it. In the end, I had to run away. Alas, the distance between player Yuan and the rest of us has increased yet again. After wandering the seemingly endless Vanishing Valley for 3 weeks, Yuan finally encountered a landmark that could direct him toward the Shadow Realm. In the distance, a mountain loomed with a distinct shape resembling a head, and there were several of them all lined up to form a mountain range. If one looked closely, one would be able to see a laughing expression on the body of these mountains, looking as though they were mocking the world. The mocking mountain range. If we follow the direction of their faces, we should arrive at our next landmark, the Red Garden of Death. Yuan muttered out loud. He looked at Xiaohua and asked, "Do you need a small break before we continue?" Even though she shook her head, Yuan decided to take a small break at the mocking mountain range. As they approached the mountains, Yuan was struck by sudden chills, almost as though his instincts were warning him. Suddenly, on the other side of the mountain range, a shadowy figure emerged from the ground, quickly rising toward the heavens. "Brother Yuan, we need to leave immediately." Xiaohua suddenly shouted with a rare nervous look on her face. This shadowy figure took on the form of a human, but its entire essence seemed to be composed of the same black fog that enshrouded the entirety of the Vanishing Valley. Upon closer inspection, one could discern black fog oozing from its body. Whatever this entity was, it evidently served as the source of the black fog. "Just what is that thing?" Yuan asked as they turned around and flew away. "I don't know. I have never seen anything like that before, but my instincts were telling me to stay away from it," Xiaohua said, her voice still a little shaky. "It looked like it crawled out of the ground. Let's wait for it to leave before we go back there," Yuan said. Xiaohua nodded. They waited a few days to see if the shadowy entity would leave, but it barely moved from its position. As he stared at the shadowy entity from a safe distance, Yuan got the feeling that he'd seen such an entity before. That's right. The colossal on the desolate continent had a similar appearance. Does that mean this shadowy entity was created by someone with the purpose of guarding something? Yuan wondered to himself. No, there's no way someone could have created this monster. Even if they did, why would they leave it here? Eventually, the shadow entity left the Mocking Mountain range, allowing Yuan and Xiaohua to approach the place once again. Even though they could have left at any time, Yuan wanted to see if the shadowy entity had left anything behind. C1413 Red Garden of Death. Chapter 1413 Red Garden of Death. 1413 Red Garden of Death. Upon arriving at the Mocking Mountain range, Yuan approached the area the unknown entity roamed to see if it had left any clues about its identity behind. Even though he wasn't particularly interested in the entity itself, he had a weird feeling when he saw it, almost as if he was connected to it in some ways. However, he found no clues left behind, not even a footstep, which was weird, considering its large size. Suddenly, a voice resounded inside his head. "My liege, I, your loyal servant, Dong Yi, have arrived at the fourth heaven. Can you hear me from your place?" Yuan spoke out loud. "Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Do you know my location as well?" "Yes, I can sense your presence within the Vanishing journey. However, I am unable to pinpoint your precise location. While I am away, I'd like you to watch over my friends at the Cultivator's Haven." "Naturally. Also, I have a question. There is this large entity within the Vanishing Valley that is covered in black fog, the same black fog that permeates the place. Do you know anything about it?" Yuan asked. "Black fog, do you mean the Black Death? That is the second most dangerous entity within the Vanishing Valley, right behind the spirit. Although it doesn't appear to be aggressive, it wanders around the Vanishing Valley, killing everything it touches. Rumors say the Black Death is currently searching for something. Do you know what this something is?" Those who have encountered the Black Death have said to heard its voice, and it would always utter the same words, being Fragment and Outer God. Fragment? Outer God? Yuan repeated these twos in a low voice to see if it would trigger any memories, but alas, nothing came up. "Why do you ask, my liege? Do you recognize the Black Death?" Dong Yi suddenly asked. "No, but I sensed a subtle connection with it," he admitted. "A connection, huh? Even if it's vague, you shouldn't ignore it, my liege, as it could have something to do with your previous incarnations." Yuan nodded. "I am aware, but there are no clues, and I do not want to risk my life finding out. I'll see what happens after I visit the Shadow Realm." Their conversation ended there and Yuan continued his journey within the Vanishing Valley. "Xiaohua, do the words Fragment and Outer God mean anything to you?" Yuan asked her as they made their way to the Red Garden of Death. Xiaohua closed her eyes to ponder seriously. "Outer God. I think I have heard my father uttering such words before, but these memories are vague." Xiaohua said a moment later. "I see. I guess we have another reason to visit the primordial realm now," Yuan smiled. Several days later, they arrived at the Red Garden of Death, and as its name suggests, it was a field of red flowers, more specifically, spider lilies. Additionally, there were countless skeletons scattered around and within the field, giving it a chilling atmosphere. Red Garden of Death. It is said that magical beasts dwelling within the Vanishing Valley, sensing the approach of their demise, are drawn instinctively to this place to breathe their final breath. Nobody knows the reason for this phenomenon either. Upon closer examination, one would discern human skeletons interspersed amidst the sea of bones within the garden. Yuan and Xiaohua lingered for a few minutes to admire the beautiful yet eerie scenery. Just as they prepared to leave, they noticed a presence slowly approaching them from a distance. Yuan immediately retrieved his weapon to confront the incoming presence. However, he lowered his weapon when he saw the entity. It was a magical beast, its form marred by grievous wounds, its internal organs exposed, hanging from its body amidst the numerous injuries it endured. The magical beast walked into the Red Garden of Death with rigid movement until it could no longer lift a leg, collapsing in the middle of the garden. Once it took its last breath, the magical beast closed its eyes. Then, the spider lilies within the Red Garden of Death abruptly began exuding a crimson-hued gas that enshrouded the field. Seeing this, Yuan and Xiaohua quickly ascended higher into the air, not daring to touch this unknown gas. Their actions were promptly validated as the corpse of the magical beast began to dissolve, gradually diminishing until only its bones remained. After the Red Garden of Death absorbed the magical beast's corpse, a single spider lily sprouted at the edge of the field. There were tens of millions of spider lilies in the Red Garden of Death. If each of them represented a corpse the garden absorbed, that meant tens of millions of entities took their last breath in this place. Let's head to our next destination, the Vanishing Pond, Yuan said a moment later. Xiaohua nodded. Fragment of Outer God, a hoarse and chilling voice suddenly resounded, causing Yuan and Xiaohua to turn around. To their surprise, the Black Death had appeared behind them like a ghost without any warning. It was still several miles behind them, but it was close enough to send shivers down their spines. Seeing this, Yuan wrapped his arm around Xiaohua's small waist and ran with Vermilion Phoenix dominating the heavens, escaping towards the direction of the Vanishing Pond as though their lives depended on it. That was dangerous. I couldn't sense its presence even though it was so close to us. Yuan cried inwardly. If the Black Death hadn't spoken, it could have sneaked up on them with ease. The realization of potentially perishing without even discerning it brought home the gravity of his predicament within the Vanishing Valley. He had underestimated the dangers of this place due to the relatively smooth progress thus far. However, his close encounter with the Black Death had opened his eyes to the true perils lurking within. In the blink of an eye, Yuan traveled hundreds of miles, not daring to stop until they were tens of thousands of miles away from the Red Garden of Death. C1414 Black Death. Chapter 1414 Black Death. 1414 Black Death, that was dangerous, a little too dangerous. Yuan sighed out loud after looking around without seeing the Black Death in sight. Sorry for grabbing you so suddenly, Xiaohua. He quickly realized that he was still carrying her like luggage and released her. It's okay, she shook her head. If not for the dark atmosphere, Yuan would have noticed her cheeks were rosy. I was captivated by the Red Garden of Death and stopped using divine sense for a moment, but I will not make that mistake again. Xianxia then said, it's not Brother Yuan's fault. I also failed to notice it until it was almost too late. He nodded. Now then. I made sure to escape toward the direction of the Vanishing Pond, but I don't know if I went past it. The Vanishing Pond has this phenomenon where it disappears for several hours every few minutes. The Vanishing Pond was exactly several thousand breaths from the Red Garden of Death if one moved at a certain speed. Unfortunately, Yuan was too occupied to count his breaths or control his speed, so he had no clue if he had gone too far or still needed to travel some more. The only way we'll find the entrance to the Shadow Realm now is. Yuan shifted his gaze from Xiaohua to the small silhouette of a sword in the far distance. That must be the giant's sword. Yuan muttered in a low voice. Xiaohua, things will get even more dangerous as we get closer to the giant's sword, not to mention the spirit. Stay in my Dantian for the time being. He knew Xiaohua was capable, but he didn't want to risk anything. Xiaohua nodded. I will watch Brother Yuan's back so you don't have to worry about that thing sneaking up on us again. After saying that, she entered his Dantian. Yuan started moving toward the giant's sword shortly after, but he didn't dare to travel too fast. A few minutes later, he sensed not just one but several fathomless presence appear around him. I am surrounded. Yuan immediately concealed all of his presence and entered the black fog near the ground, further erasing his existence. A few moments later, several magical beasts appeared and, without hesitation, immediately started attacking one another. Yuan slowly distanced himself as he watched with amazement. Why are they fighting each other? He wondered. Magical beasts typically avoid each other, but in the Vanishing Valley, where food and water are scarce resources, they could only feast upon other magical beasts' flesh and blood, especially since they were all of different bloodlines. Moreover, consuming other magical beasts would further boost their own strength. In the blink of an eye, 2 of the 4 magical beasts that appeared were slain, their corpses disappearing into the black fog. Even if he wanted to loot the corpses, Yuan could barely endure the powerful ripples created by the magical beasts' clashes, as it contained something he experienced recently, immortal qi. Fortunately, the immortal chi emitted by these magical beasts was nowhere near as strong as Senior Bei's immortal chi. Suddenly, amid his escape, one of the attacks from the magical beasts coincidentally flew his way. Shit! What kind of luck is this? Yuan suddenly recalled the major misfortune curse that came alongside the Celestial Emperor's curse that greatly reduced his luck. It was not an attack that Yuan could avoid, so he could only block it even if it would reveal his presence. He gathered as much spiritual energy as he could in a short amount of time and released it at the incoming attack. Boom! The clash created a powerful ripple that swept the black fog around them, revealing Yuan's figure to the magical beasts, who stopped fighting to look at the newcomer. In the eyes of a magical beast, the taste of a human's flesh and blood was far superior to that of a beast, so they would always prioritize hunting humans first. Once Yuan's presence was exposed, the two immortal magical beasts ignored each other and charged at Yuan with an unfathomable sense of yearning. Seeing this, Yuan turned tail and used Vermilion Phoenix dominating the heavens to soar towards the giant sword in the distance. Omicron M, however, unlike the Black Death, these magical beasts were able to chase after him, even slowly inching toward him. While they played cat and mouse, the magical beasts would constantly bombard Yuan with attacks from behind, closing their distance with every attack. If Yuan hadn't gained some distance from the magical beasts in the beginning, he would have already been caught by them. Realizing that he wouldn't be able to escape from these magical beasts for much longer, Yuan started attacking them as he flew. Limitless Sword, First Domain, Endless Sword Stream, 5,000 swords appeared in the sky and started raining down on the magical beasts. Each of these swords was imbued with enhanced sword chi, but they were ineffective against these magical beasts, bouncing off their body like throwing rocks at a mountain. My enhanced sword aura is unable to pierce their immortal chi? Yuan swallowed nervously after realizing this. If physical attacks were ineffective, he could only try spiritual attacks. After taking a moment to prepare, Yuan suddenly stopped moving, turned around, and activated Immortal Monarch's dominion on the magical beasts. Halt! He roared at them. Sure enough, the magical beasts immediately stopped moving and stared at him in a dazed manner. Kill each other, he commanded. As though they were bewitched by a power beyond their understanding, the magical beasts shifted their gaze from Yuan to each other and, before long, resumed their fight. It really worked. Yuan swallowed nervously. Brother Yuan. That thing is back. Xiaohua suddenly alerted him. Fragment of Outer God, the Black Death had appeared like a ghost in front of the magical beasts, yet the beasts were unaware and continued fighting each other. When the Black Death took a step toward Yuan, its body passed through the magical beasts, causing them to collapse instantly, as if they had fallen asleep. However, their eyes were wide open and without any signs of life. Seeing this, Yuan immediately started running toward the giant sword again. C1415 Giant Sword. Chapter 1415 Giant Sword 1415 Giant Sword. As Yuan soared through the Vanishing Valley at neck-breaking speed, he heard a chilling voice resound from behind. Fragment of Outer God. Brother Yuan. That thing is chasing after you. Xiaohua alerted him in a nervous voice. Why now? It didn't follow us before. Yuan cried out loud. He turned to look back, and sure enough, the Black Death was chasing after him with large strides. It was a terrifying scene straight from horror movies, sending chills throughout Yuan's body. He gritted his teeth and tossed several sword lights infused with enhanced sword aura at the Black Death. As the sword lights made contact with the Black Death, they penetrated its body, vanishing within it. Yuan was baffled by what had just witnessed. The enhanced sword aura had completely vanished within the Black Death's body, almost as though they were erased from existence. Dong Yi. Does the Black Death have any weaknesses? Yuan shouted out loud, hoping Dong Yi could hear him. A few moments later, Dong Yi responded, but it was not what Yuan had hoped to hear. Regrettably, the Black Death possesses no discernible weakness. Anything it comes into contact with perishes, whether it be spiritual energy or treasures. In essence, that entity is effectively invincible. Well, I am being chased by said Invincible being right now. Do you have any advice to get me out of this situation? He asked. What? Why would the Black Death chase after you, my liege? It's known for ignoring everything even when provoked. Are you sure it's not a coincidence the Black Death is moving in your direction? Coincidence, my ass. It's literally running after me, he cried. Dong Yi frowned when he heard this, and he pondered whether he should intervene in this situation or let fate handle it like usual. No. Fate led him to the Vanishing Valley for a reason. I cannot intervene, or my liege will grind these old bones once he fully recovers his memories. Dong Yi quickly came to a decision. He then said, You are not fated to die in the Vanishing Valley, my liege. Just do whatever you usually do. Thanks for the help. Yuan exclaimed in a sarcastic tone. He continued soaring toward the giant sword over the next several days, ignoring all of the magical beasts he encountered, even the ones that attacked him. After all, even if he didn't lift an arm, the Black Death chasing after him would kill them with a simple touch. During these several days, Yuan analyzed the Black Death as he escaped from it. He noticed that none of the magical beasts there were able to see or sense the Black Death, almost as though it was invisible to them. It didn't matter if these beasts had immortal chi or not, and because none of them could sense the Black Death, some would walk into its path and unknowingly perish. One could consider the Black Death as a type of fate for magical beasts, as it could not be seen or anticipated by them until it was already too late. Moreover, this kind of fate only leads the beasts to their death. The best that the magical beasts within the Vanishing Valley could do was to pray that they weren't destined to cross paths with the Black Death, much like how humans could only hope they weren't fated to perish at any given moment. As Yuan came to this realization, he sensed something change within him, almost as if something had awakened. However, he was too busy running away from the Black Death to think about it. Suddenly, Yuan noticed the Black Death slowing down. Huh? Why is it stopping? Yuan didn't think for a second that the Black Death might have gotten tired of chasing after him and quickly deduced that it was probably unwilling to approach the giant sword for some reason. Seeing this, he continued approaching the giant sword. The Black Death eventually stopped chasing after him and disappeared. However, without realizing it, Yuan had gotten much closer to the giant's sword than had anticipated. Although Senior Bai had warned him to not get too close to the giant's sword, he wanted to see the mentioned spirit even if it was just a glimpse. Yuan stopped his movements to stare at the majestic sword in the distance, his gaze filled with awe. The giant sword was unlike anything Yuan had encountered before. Its blade boasted intricate engravings, adding to its allure. Yet, what captivated Yuan's attention the most was undeniably the enigmatic aura emanating from the sword. The aura bore a resemblance to both sword aura and enhanced sword aura, yet it possessed an entirely distinct quality that was unfathomably stronger and sharper. As though he was mesmerized by it, Yuan stared at the sword with a dazed look on his face. Ding! Omicron M, even the system cannot identify it? Yuan muttered to himself as he saw the notice. Suddenly, before he could even take a moment to contemplate the mysterious aura, Yuan's entire body shuddered, as if it were warning him of imminent danger. He instinctively used his movement technique. The very instant Yuan moved, a potent sword aura descended upon the spot where he had stood just a split second ago, blowing away the black fog and creating a massive 10-mile-long sword mark in the ground. This sword mark was also so deep that one would not be able to see the bottom with their bare eyes. Yuan stared at the sword mark with wide eyes, his back soaked in cold sweat. Fuck. Even my regeneration ability wouldn't be able to save me if I was struck by such a devastating attack. He cried inwardly. Brother Yuan. Look at the top of the sword. Xiao Hua suddenly said. Yuan lifted his gaze to the very top of the giant sword, where a silhouette that hadn't been there moments before silently observed him. The spirit. Yuan immediately recognized the identity of this silhouette even though he couldn't see its appearance. C1416 Fearsome Existence. Chapter 1416 Fearsome Existence. 1416 Fearsome Existence. Just as Senior Bai had mentioned, the spirit assumed the form of a human. Despite the distance between them, Yuan could discern that it bore the likeness of a slender female figure, its long hair being caressed by the gentle and ominous wind. Yuan tried to take a closer look at this spirit, but there was an invisible force that blocked his divine sense from approaching it after a certain distance. It was clear that the spirit did not welcome his gaze. However, after the initial attack, the spirit did not attack Yuan again, almost as though it was only trying to warn him, or so he thought. The next moment, he watched as the spirit raised its arm before swinging it in his direction. Sha! Boom! A potent sword light lashed out at Yuan's location like a whip, carving another deep sword mark into the ground, stretching for miles. Brother Yuan, what are you doing? We need to get out of here as soon as possible. That is not an opponent you can fight. Xiaohua exclaimed in a terrified voice. Even with all the time he had spent with her, Yuan had never witnessed Xiaohua display such evident fear before. This underscored the incomprehensible power and sheer terror that the spirit of the giant sword wielded. After confirming its fearsome existence, Yuan, not wanting to aggravate the spirit anymore, turned around and started running toward the Shadow Realm's entrance. Judging by the giant sword view from my position, should be very close to it. Yuan thought to himself as he activated Vermilion Phoenix dominating the heavens. Normally, he would test the water by throwing a few attacks at his aggressors, just like he did with the Black Death, but he truly did not want to find out what would happen if he were to attack this incomprehensible spirit. Although I couldn't sense it at first, its attacks are imbued with enhanced sword aura, and they are even many times more powerful than mine. Yuan glanced at the second sword mark that still lingered with the spirit's enhanced sword aura. If his enhanced sword aura were to clash with the spirit's enhanced sword aura, he would undoubtedly lose. Miserably, at that. Yuan could sense the spirit's sharp gaze following him even without looking at it. He was moving at an extreme speed that would bewilder even Divine Realm experts, yet the spirit could easily follow his movements. A few seconds later, Yuan was hit by another chilling sensation that sent shivers throughout his entire body. He immediately halted his movements, not daring to move an inch. Bang! For sword marks appeared around him the very next second. If he had continued moving, even changing directions, he would have perished to the spirit's attack, which anticipated even his escape routes. The only thing the spirit hadn't anticipated was his sudden halt, which saved his life. This is fucking crazy. Yuan cried inwardly as he started soaring toward the Shadow Realm's entrance once again. The spirit, as though it was impressed by Yuan's performance, stopped attacking him for the time being, but its gaze remained fixated on him, watching his every movement. A few minutes later, Yuan barely noticed a black portal in the distance. That must be the entrance to the Shadow Realm. Even though he was relieved to finally see the entrance, he still had to worry about getting there safely, as he hadn't forgotten about the spirit that was still watching him. Sure enough, just as he was mere moments away from reaching the portal, he sensed the spirit's aura abruptly erupt, reaching the heavens. Yuan's entire body trembled violently, as though it was warning him of his immediate demise. With a strong sense of foreboding that he would not survive the incoming attack, Yuan didn't hesitate to unleash all of his hidden strength. Heaven's supremacy. A majestic golden aura enveloped Yuan as an unfathomable power surged forth from the depths of his body. When the golden immortal physique detected the power of heaven's supremacy, it responded by manifesting a semi-transparent armor that enveloped his entire body. Progress, 10%. This golden armor did not obstruct Yuan's movements, nor did it have any weight to it. However, it further boosted Yuan's prowess to even greater heights, rivaling that of the spirit. Omicron M. Come. Empyrean Overlord. Yuan summoned his sword and activated God of War's astral arts. The spirit's figure visibly shook after seeing the Empyrean Overlord. It instinctively pulled back its attack, but it acted a little too late. A massive amount of spiritual energy and enhanced sword aura descended upon Yuan, surpassing the attack he used on Senior by several times. 9 Supreme Swords. Yuan used the 9 Supreme Swords, executing a series of rapid sword strikes in quick succession, each several magnitudes stronger than the last. When Yuan's all-out assault collided with the spirit's attack, it generated a colossal ripple that rent space asunder and instilled fear in every existence within the Vanishing Valley that sensed it, regardless of their cultivation level. It took 6 out of 9 of the 9 supreme sword strikes to obliterate the spirit's attack, leaving the remaining 3 to hurtle toward the spirit itself. However, Yuan was not willing to wait for the results and immediately charged into the entrance to the Shadow Realm. Why? The spirit raised a hand and extended it in Yuan's direction, but he had already disappeared into the Shadow Realm by that point. The spirit remained in that position like a stone statue. Just as the final 3 sword strikes from Yuan's 9 supreme swords closed in on the spirit, it nonchalantly swung its arm, effortlessly dismantling the most formidable attack Yuan could muster at that moment, treating it with nonchalance. That sword just now, it can't be. The spirit muttered in a dazed voice as it recalled the image of Yuan's Empyrean overlord inside its head. It desired to pursue Yuan to confirm its suspicions, but its movements were constrained, unable to stray too far from the giant's sword. Furthermore, the entrance to the Shadow Realm lay beyond its travel range, rendering any efforts futile. C1417 Returning to the Shadow Realm. Chapter 1417 Returning to the Shadow Realm. 1417 Returning to the Shadow Realm. Upon escaping into the Shadow Realm, Yuan took a good minute to breathe after nearly losing his life to the spirit's devastating attack. I have never been so close to experiencing death, not even when I actually died inside the Nameless Emperor's tomb. Yuan cried out loud as he fell flat on the cold ground. That spirit was immensely powerful, perhaps even stronger than Senior Bai. Xiaohua came out of his dantian to comfort him, yet you managed to escape unscathed, brother Yuan. Yuan looked at his sweaty palms and sighed, yes, but at the cost of my last usage of heaven's supremacy. Unless I gain its approval, I won't be able to call forth its power again, and we might have to face that spirit again once we leave the Shadow Realm. Without heaven's supremacy, Yuan knew he had no hopes of escaping the spirit a second time. In fact, he believed that even if he had unlimited usage of heaven's supremacy, it still wouldn't be close to enough to defeat the spirit at his current strength. Once head rested enough and composed himself again, Yuan examined his surroundings. Just as when he first entered the Shadow Realm back at the Dragon Essence Temple, he found himself amidst a desolate and dilapidated cityscape that looked like it had been void of life for eras. However, there were no trials for him to do. Is this place located in the same dimension as the Dragon Essence Temple's Shadow Realm? Yuan voiced his concerns aloud, feeling a twinge of worry at the possibility of them being separated, as it meant he wouldn't be able to search for the God Ascension Realm experts he met before in this Shadow Realm. However, he quickly recollected one of the God Ascension Realm experts mentioning that the Shadow Realm had multiple entrances. Hence, there was a reasonable likelihood that they existed somewhere within this particular Shadow Realm. The only challenge lay in locating them amidst this vast and unfamiliar terrain. Where should I begin? He sighed. Unlike the Vanishing Valley, where he was given instructions on reaching the Shadow Realm, he had no clue where to even begin once he arrived at the destination. In the end, he could only think of one solution. I guess we'll have to wander around until we find something again, he muttered. His divine sense was strong enough to cover the entire abandoned city and even several miles outside, where the real Shadow Realm was located. Once Xiaohua returned to his dantian, he went into the sky and flew outside the city, entering the Shadow Realm. Immediately after leaving the city, shadowy entities of various shapes and sizes began appearing around Yuan, their red eyes staring at him with immense bloodlust. Human. 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 Their hoarse voices constantly resounded, reminding Yuan of his first encounter with these banished souls. However, unlike when he was only a spirit grandmaster, he was not completely clueless in the Shadow Realm and even had sufficient prowess to wander the place without worrying too much about the banished souls. The banished souls were also slightly stronger than he remembered, but they weren't nearly strong or fast enough to threaten him as long as he paid attention. They were most likely powerful cultivators in the past, but they've been reduced to such a pitiful state after wandering as a trapped soul for countless years. Only someone with a cruel and indifferent heart could do such a thing to them. Xiaohua voiced her sentiments, expressing sympathy for these banished souls, noting the resemblance of their plight to that of exiles within the primordial realm. Similar to these banished souls, exiles themselves are trapped within the primordial realm by the Celestial Emperor. However, exiles, at the very least, retain their physical bodies and possess a glimmer of hope for eventual freedom through the Supreme Heaven's legacy. Meanwhile, banished souls are forsaken and left to languish in this dark and desolate realm. Though they may harbor a flicker of hope that someone like Yuan might appear to rescue them from the Shadow Realm, such occasions are less likely to occur than an exile completing the Supreme Heaven's legacy, as not even immortal cultivators dare to venture into this forbidding domain. As Yuan ventured deeper into the Shadow Realm, the banished souls grew progressively more powerful, their bloodlust for him intensifying with each passing moment. Senior Bai warned me to not attack them since it will aggravate them even further, but they will eventually overwhelm me at this rate. Yuan sighed inwardly as he contemplated using Dragon's Gaze on these banished souls. In the end, he decided to scare them a little without actually hurting them. He activated Dragon's Gaze without directing it at any of the banished souls, serving it as a warning to them. Scram if you don't want your soul to perish. Yuan let out a resounding roar, his voice amplified by soul strength. When the banished souls perceived the formidable prowess of Yuan's soul strength, they abruptly ceased their pursuit and even fled as if their lives hung in the balance. Though they may not have the intelligence to comprehend it, their instincts, honed through their experiences in life, could sense impending doom and instinctively recoil from it. That worked better than I'd anticipated. Yuan thought to himself as he continued wandering the Shadow Realm without a single banished soul in sight. However, it was not as though the banished souls vanished entirely. Yuan could still perceive them with his divine sense. They remained present, albeit at a distance, silently observing his every movement, as if they were waiting for him to lower his guard, their moment to strike. Knowing this, Yuan didn't dare to ease his guard and continued to exude some of his soul strength once in a while as a reminder to these banished souls that he still could erase their existences at will. Moreover, Yuan's act of releasing his soul strength was not within the purview of just anyone. It was achievable only due to his ample soul strength and the accumulated knowledge from his past lives. Typically, only immortal cultivators who have cultivated their souls for centuries would dare to use their soul strength in such an extravagant manner, as it could potentially inflict harm upon their soul if executed incorrectly or impulsively. Yet, Yuan executed it with ease, as if it was second nature, akin to the act of breathing. C1418 A Familiar Place. Chapter 1418 A Familiar Place. 1418 A familiar place. Now that no banished souls dared to approach him, Yuan found traveling the Shadow Realm much more relaxed. However, it didn't mean it was a leisure journey, as he had to focus on controlling the amount of soul strength he exuded. If he exuded too much, it might hurt the banished souls, causing them to rampage, but if it's too weak, it would not keep them away. Moreover, he had to be careful with such an act entirely, as it could easily backfire and damage his soul. Fortunately for him, his soul cultivation technique, Heaven's indomitable soul, constantly recovered his soul strength, or else he wouldn't have been able to use such a method. Several days later, Yuan still wandered the Shadow Realm without any clue as to his location. However, he noticed the banished souls growing stronger and stronger, requiring him to use more soul strength to keep them away. At the rate their strength is growing, I won't be able to keep up in another week or so. Yuan thought to himself. 3 days later, Yuan noticed another city in the distance. He immediately approached it. Upon entering the city, none of the banished souls dared to follow him past the city walls, almost as though they were forbidden from doing so. Yet, Yuan was unable to sense anything odd around the city, nothing that could explain why the banished souls refused to enter the city. He thought there was a formation around the city that kept the banished souls away, but he couldn't sense anything like that. Even if it was a powerful level 9 formation, he should still be able to sense it to a certain extent. Since he didn't have to worry about the banished souls appearing in the city, Yuan took this time to recover his soul strength and take a break. Once he fully recovered, Yuan did not immediately continue his journey and flew into the air to examine the city. This city isn't the same as the previous city, but it bears some resemblance, almost as though it's from the same city, just separated. Yuan muttered. He decided to look around the city to see if there were any more clues. As he strolled throughout the city, he felt a sense of nostalgia, almost as if had been to this place before it turned to such a sorry state. But where have I seen this place? He looked at the stores and such, hoping it'd trigger something within him. Golden dumplings. House of Starlight. Lao's perfect noodle. Unfortunately, the place was too small, and seeing the store names only further strengthened the feeling that he had been to this place before. If this is only a part of the whole city, there should be other similar places in the Shadow Realm. Perhaps I will find my answer once I visit enough of them. With this thought in mind, Yuan immediately left the city to find the next one. Even though he didn't know where he was going, Yuan moved with a sense of purpose without feeling hopeless or lost, as though he instinctively knew the layout of the Shadow Realm. He encountered another city 5 days later. I am certain now. This is just a portion of a city, and I have been to this city before. Yuan confirmed his suspicions after visiting the third city. However, he couldn't recall where and when he visited the place before, no matter how hard he racked his brains. He left the city to find the next one. However, the strength of the banished souls had reached the level where even Yuan could not keep them away with his soul strength without injuring them, so he had to return to avoiding them. This time, it took nearly 2 weeks to reach the next city. Unlike the first 3 cities, there was something distinctly different about this one. At its heart stood a towering and majestic pagoda, its height seemingly reaching the heavens themselves. So striking was its presence that Yuan spotted it from miles away. When Yuan saw this pagoda, a name immediately appeared inside his head, but he didn't dare to jump to conclusions. When he reached the city walls, he noticed a worn-down sign lying on the ground right before the entrance to the city. His expression froze when he read the words on the sign. Ah. As I thought, this place is City of Xian. Indeed, this place was the home of Xian, also known as the evil god who slew the first celestial emperor, an evil abomination that killed millions of cultivators, enough to create an ocean of blood and mountains with corpses. Yuan descended beside the sign and stared at it with a profound expression on his face. Sometime later, he lifted it with spiritual energy and placed it above the city entrance, where it once sat with dignity. Afterward, he directed his gaze towards the pagoda at the heart of the city. Despite countless years of abandonment, it remained tall and majestic, seemingly untouched by the passage of time. He approached it with a heavy heart, feeling incredibly sorrowful for some reason. Even if he didn't have all of Xian's memories, it was a feeling he received from his soul. As Yuan approached the pagoda and stood at its entrance, he stared at the grand sign that hung above the doors. Invincible Heaven. Ah, as Yuan stood before the Invincible Heaven, memories that had been blocked started flowing into his mind once again. City Lord, what do you think of the name Invincible Heaven? I think it's quite the suitable name for someone like you, someone who has yet to experience defeat, a young man asked him. Why are you asking me that when you've already made a sign and hung it up at the entrance? Xian shook his head with a gentle smile. The young man rubbed his nose in a bashful manner and said, we couldn't think of anything more fitting, so we went ahead of ourselves a little. He quickly continued, but we can tear it down and make another one if you really don't like it. No, this is fine. Good job. Thank you, City Lord. The young man bowed, showing a relieved expression on his face. C1419 Invincible Heaven. Chapter 1419 Invincible Heaven. 1419 Invincible Heaven. As Yuan recalled his time as the city lord of the city of Xian, he opened the doors to the Invincible Heaven and entered it. The first floor served as the lobby, where his citizens would frequently line up to discuss their grievances with the city, among other matters. During his time as the city lord, Xian would seek advice from the citizens to improve the city's lifestyle. My name is. I live at. I am here today because I have an issue with my neighbor. I have a business at. I am here to see if I can delay my taxes this month due to. The citizens visited Xian for all sorts of reasons, even minor issues that weren't related to the city at all. Normally, such requests would only be deemed a waste of time and immediately turned away, but Xian listened to everyone, regardless of how insignificant it may seem. Because of this, he was trusted by all of the citizens, as well as being highly respected by them. And it was to the point where some would claim that the citizens trusted their city lord more than their own family. The second and third floors served as waiting areas for these citizens. From the fourth floor and upward, Xian utilized the space as training rooms and living quarters for his soldiers. The invincible heaven was crafted using precious materials capable of withstanding blows from even immortal cultivators, and each floor could easily accommodate several people. Despite its towering height, Xian considered it an unnecessary extravagance, a waste of resources. However, the builders were resolute in creating a structure befitting his status, resulting in the magnificent pagoda that could accommodate thousands despite being intended for a single occupant. "Good morning, City Lord." "City Lord, do you have a minute to spare? I would like to test out a new technique that I've recently created on you." Everyone in the city of Xian held deep love and respect for Xian. He had transformed a humble backwater village, devoid of any significant resources, into a formidable and wealthy city boasting its own military might, surpassing even many major cities in the region. Xian himself was a formidable warrior, renowned far and wide as an undefeated prodigy capable of beating opponents an entire realm above his own cultivation. Also known as the God of War, his mere presence instilled a sense of security among the citizens, granting them peaceful slumber devoid of worry, akin to that of newborn infants. At the pinnacle of the invincible heaven rested Xian's work chamber, affording him a vantage point from which he could survey the entirety of the city below while seated on this majestic seat, his presence resembling that of a god. Upon reaching the summit of the pagoda, Yuan removed the thick layer of dust on an object that had settled over millions of years, revealing the gleaming surface of the golden throne beneath, before taking his seat upon it. As he sat on the throne, even more memories flowed into his mind. "City Lord, the Celestial Emperor's messenger is here to request your aid once again." A soldier approached him with a troubled expression, relaying the news. "Humph. No matter how many times he sends his messengers, my answer will always be the same. I have no interest in aiding him in a war that was created by his own ego and obsession. I will not send my soldiers to their death for someone like him. I will let the messenger know," the soldier said before leaving. Naturally, the soldier refrained from conveying Xian's response word for word to the messenger, recognizing that it could be interpreted as a declaration of war by the Celestial Emperor. During Xian's era, the Celestial Emperor wielded unchecked power, intoxicated by his own authority. He would hog all of the resources for himself and eliminate any perceived threat, regardless of the consequences for the world at large. However respectfully the city of Xian may decline to support the Celestial Emperor in his war, it would eventually be perceived as defiance, even opposition. In the eyes of the Celestial Emperor, refusal to ally could only be interpreted as enmity. As expected, after 3 refusals, the Celestial Emperor ceased sending messengers and instead dispatched soldiers of war to the city of Xian to pressure Tian. Unfortunately for the Celestial Emperor, Tian wasn't some pushover and immediately got rid of these soldiers who dared to threaten his city. Yet, despite Tian's resistance, the Celestial Emperor persisted, sending increasingly larger forces with each encounter, determined to assert his dominance over the city of Xian. This back and forth continued for a few years until the Celestial Emperor had enough and adjusted his plan slightly. However, this sudden change in tactics resulted in an incident that marked the end of a concluding war and the start of an even bigger war that lasted for thousands of years, as well as the birth of a fearsome entity known as the Evil God. After taking another moment to look around, he stood up and said, "There's a nearby place that I would like to visit. Let's make a slight detour." After departing from the invincible heaven, Yuan proceeded on foot towards a particular building situated several minutes away. Yuan wiped away the dust covering the metal tag next to the gate, revealing the surname Tian flawlessly engraved on it. Indeed, had returned to his old home, where he lived a humble life with his beloved wife. Upon entering the building, he immediately walked to a specific room on the 2nd floor. When he saw the interior, he recalled what the stairway to heaven showed him during his previous trial. Meishio, Yuan gritted his teeth and clenched his fists upon entering the blood-stained room, where the walls and ceiling were tainted with brown, dried-up blood from countless years ago, suggesting that someone had met a grisly fate within those confines. Sensing a significant surge of bloodlust from him, Xiaohua nervously inquired, "Are you all right, Brother Yuan?" Hearing her voice, Yuan took a deep breath and nodded weakly, "Yes." C1420 Basement. Chapter 1420 Basement 1420 Basement. After spending a moment staring at the gruesome scene before him, Yuan released a deep sigh before turning around and walking out of the room. He walked back downstairs until he reached the basement. A thick cloud of dust smacked into Yuan's face when he opened the basement door, but he reacted quickly enough to block it. Upon walking down the staircase that creaked with every step, Yuan arrived at a small room that had visited before during a trial within the stairway to heaven. The room seemed empty at first glance besides the obvious dust covering every inch of the place, but Yuan approached one of the walls in a manner that suggested something was there. He closed his eyes and stood there in silence. A few moments later, he muttered a few inaudible words. A profound ripple swept the room in response, revealing a red portal standing right in front of Yuan. After seeing this portal, Yuan walked into it without any hesitation. Another world existed on the other side of the portal. It was a pitch-black world without any light, so dark that Yuan wouldn't be able to see his own hand even if he waved it in his face. Divine sense was also useless in this abyss, or rather, unavailable, as Yuan's cultivation base was sealed the moment he entered, almost as though the darkness had consumed it all. He didn't even bother trying to summon his alchemy flames to light up the place because he knew that it would be a futile effort. Despite having zero visibility and his cultivation base sealed, Yuan calmly walked forward with precise and calm strides, occasionally turning at a specific angle. Xiaohua was quite curious about their location, but she didn't want to disturb Yuan, who was immersed in his memories, following a path that led him to his destination. After 15 minutes of constant movement, Yuan's view turned from absolute darkness to a fully lit room that was the exact size as his basement room. However, the room was immaculate and without a speck of dust. Moreover, there were 3 items displayed at the end of the room. Yuan approached the 3 items with a sense of nostalgia washing over him. There was an old silver spear, a damaged black chest armor, and a pair of worn-out black boots. These 3 items were worn by Xian back when he was still known as the God of War, experiencing more battles than even the most veteran soldiers nowadays. Despite their worn-out appearances, they still exuded a profound aura that surpasses even divine-grade treasures. Silver Victory, Grade, Mythic, Quality, Peak, Physical Strength Requirement, 27 million, Description, an ancient relic once wielded by the God of War, who fought and won over 1 million battles. Despite its tattered appearance, it remains in great condition. Increases damage by 10,000%. Increases weapon penetration by 20,000%. Increases damage by an additional 10,000% when fighting another soldier. Stygian Vest, Grade, Mythic, Quality, Peak, Physical Strength Requirement, 20 million, Physical Defense Requirement, 35 million, Description. The God of War never entered battle without this piece of armor, saving his life countless times. Increases physical defense by 1,000%. When worn, it will reflect all damages from those below Divine Lord. God of War's protection will automatically activate when it senses imminent danger that threatens the wearer's life, negating any damage a single time from those below Divine Emperor, 72-hour cooldown. Stygian Boots, Grade, Mythic, Quality, Peak, Physical Strength Requirement, 12 million, Physical Defense Requirement, 19 million, Description. God of War's favorite shoes, its sole dyed crimson from always being submerged in his enemy's blood. Increases movement speed by 100% when worn. Immune to most movement restrictions when worn. Increases movement speed by an additional 50% when in a battlefield environment. Yuan stored these 2 of these 3 treasures in his spatial ring, wearing the Stygian boots immediately. Although he already has a spear, Silver Victory's prowess vastly surpassed the Dragon's Soul in its current form in terms of raw power. The only advantage Dragon's Soul had over Silver Victory would be its unique effect that ignores spiritual energy. Unless he encountered an enemy he could not harm normally, such as by shootout, Silver Victory would serve him better. As for the armor, he finally had something to replace the invisible dragon's cloak, which had served him long enough. Moreover, his naked body alone, strengthened by the golden immortal physique, could endure attacks from divine warriors, making the invisible dragon's cloak even more obsolete. However, the Stygian boosts are arguably the best of the three treasures for Yuan, as treasures that increase one's movement speed are exceedingly rare and sought after. Furthermore, it also protected him from many movement restrictions, such as formations that could slow down one's movement. In a fight between two equally skilled and powerful fighters, the one with the superior speed usually comes out as the victor, hence why anything that could boost one's movement speed is worth a fortune. That elaborate room before this one was only meant to hide these three treasures? Xiaohua couldn't help but ask. Yuan nodded. This room was meant to be a safe shelter for my wife, but it ended up becoming a storage. Huh? Brother Yuan's wife? Xiaohua muttered in a dazed voice. My previous life. I had a wife and a child. Unfortunately, I was unable to protect them. They were assassinated while I was busy with the enemy. Yuan sighed, not hiding one of his darkest moments in history. Yuan closed his eyes, recalling the events that led up to that tragic incident. Xian lived a rough childhood from the moment of his birth. He was abandoned shortly after birth and left in the wilderness as food for the wild beasts. If a passing mountain bandit hadn't found him and decided to raise him, that would have been the end of everything. Yet, against all odds, Xian managed to survive. C1421 Xian. Chapter 1421 Xian 1421 Xian. One might expect Xian's life to get better after being adopted by a mountain bandit, but he was treated as a servant until he was able to prove to the others that he had what it took to become a fellow bandit. If you want to be acknowledged as a fellow bandit, you'll need to plunder at least 10 gold coins by yourself. If you cannot do even that, you might as well be a slave for the rest of your life. After years of self-training without any instructors, Xian finally earned the others' respect by looting 100 gold coins from a merchant after killing 3 mortal guards all by himself. He was only 10 years old at that time. Ha ha ha. From now on, you'll be our 17th brother. 100 gold coins. That's a record. By a whopping 24 gold coins. Upon becoming a full-fledged bandit for 2 short years, misfortune befell Xian once again when their gang of bandits were caught and executed by a group of soldiers. At that time, half of the bandits including Xian were mere mortals without any cultivation. The other half were hovering in the mid-level of spirit apprentice. Kill these low-life bandits. Kill them all. No mercy. Unsurprisingly, when a group of spirit warriors appeared to hunt them, none of the bandits survived. All of them were slain mercilessly, except for one. When the soldiers saw how young yet skillful he wielded his weapon and learned his history with the bandits, they offered him a new life as a soldier for the Xiu family, a powerful and influential royal family in the 4th heaven. Kid, you don't have to die here. Come with us and start a new life as a soldier for the Xiu family. You'll be fed properly, given a real bed, paid a salary, and even have a worthwhile purpose in life. If you refuse, you'll die here with the very bandits that took advantage of you. Xian had no reason to refuse such a generous offer, so he accepted it, following these soldiers back to the Xiu family, where he was given proper education and training. His life as a soldier wasn't easy and extremely strict, completely different from that of a mountain bandit, but Xian adapted to his new lifestyle very quickly. His attitude and morals quickly changed, shocking even those who brought him back. Are you really the same mountain bandit from a week ago? Fuck. How can a person change so fast? You're not actually a spy, are you? Eventually, the soldiers realized that Xian was blessed with a great gift, the ability to master any weapon with ease. Huh? Why is he training with the sword today when he was training with the spear just yesterday? I saw him training with the saber, too. I guess he's having trouble picking a weapon. If you're a man, you've got to pick the spear. Are you insane? Swords dominate the martial world for a reason. It didn't take long for the Xiu family to take notice of Xian's immense talent with weapons. No matter what kind of weapon they tossed his way, Xian would perfect it within a day, 2 at most, despite having never touched them before. I have never witnessed such talents before. And he's not even an adult. We need to nurture him properly. He'll be of great asset to our Xiu family in the future. In just a single year, Xian went from an ordinary soldier still in training to being a royal guard for the Xiu family. After becoming a royal guard, Xian was taught how to cultivate and was even allowed to use the Xiu family's cultivation technique, something heavily protested at first but eventually stopped after the Xiu family's treasured jewel, Xiu Mei, insisted on letting him learn the technique. Princess Xiu, we need to speak about your obsession with that young soldier. It is too much for someone of your stature. Please think of how it'll affect your image. There are already rumors spreading about the two of you. Screw my image. He's the only one around my age here and someone I can call a real friend. If you don't like it, you can simply ignore it. As for the rumors, are they calling us a couple yet? What if they think we've kissed already? Do you think he's heard of them, too? Ah. I'm so embarrassed. It was no secret that the princess of the Xiu family would often visit the soldiers' barracks to play with Xian, who was only a year older than her. Furthermore, she fancied Xian's appearance and admired his diligent nature. Nobody would be shocked if they were told that Xiu Mei had some sort of romantic feelings for him. In fact, it was so obvious that even a blind man would be able to see it. However, because of the difference in their status, Xian would often be a target of bullying, mostly by young masters from powerful and wealthy families who envied his relationship with Xiu Mei. It was inevitable even though he was a royal guard because, in the end, he was just a mere soldier. Ah. Xian. You're all bruised again. Why don't you fight back? You can easily handle those losers with your skills and strength. Xiu Mei would often reprimand him for not defending himself. Xian responded with a subtle smile, I can only point my weapon at the Xiu family's enemies. Unless they become your enemy, I am unable to harm them. Otherwise, your family will also be affected, as I am, at the end of the day, your soldier. Moreover, beating the helpless and weak is only something a bully and bandit would do. I am past that kind of life. Xian. Xiu Mei looked at him with a tender gaze. He continued, also, if your royal highness cannot convince them to stop, what can I, a mere foot soldier, do? Xiu Mei's body trembled upon hearing his words that had a double meaning. She immediately turned around and stomped away in anger. The following day, an incident that sent the entire fourth heaven into an uproar occurred. Princess Xiu Mei, who was known far and wide for her docile and gentle nature, had gone on a rampage and brutally assaulted several famous troublemakers at a popular restaurant, sending them to the hospital with a broken nose and half of their teeth missing. C1422 Princess Xiu. Chapter 1422 Princess Xiu 1422 Princess Xiu. The day after Xian got bullied and spoke with her, Xiu Mei sneaked out of the royal palace and made her way to a famous restaurant in the same city, where the bullies that messed with Xian are rumored to frequent. Why, your royal highness? What in heaven's name are you doing here by yourself? Where are your guards? The receptionist was scared out of her mind when Xiu Mei walked into the restaurant alone. Xiu Mei casually dismissively waved her hand and spoke, forget about that. I need to know something. Is the Li family's young master and his group of troublemakers here right now? Young Master Li and his friends? Yes, they have been dining on the top floor for the past half hour. If your royal highness is looking for them, I will call them down here for you. No, that won't be necessary. I'll go greet them myself since they aren't expecting me. Without saying anything else, Xiu Mei walked upstairs with the receptionist staring at her back with a nervous gaze. I should notify the Xiu family. The receptionist had an ominous feeling when he saw Xiu Mei and didn't want to be responsible if anything were to happen to her. While the receptionist alerted the Xiu family of Xiu Mei's presence at the restaurant, the person herself casually climbed to the top floor of the restaurant. At the end of the hall, 2 guards were standing before a closed room that couldn't contain the loud laughter inside. Ha ha ha. Did you see how that wimp stood there and ate our fists? I have never seen such a coward before. How did a loser like that become a royal guard for the Xiu family? Whoever made that decision must have been blind. Fuck. Just thinking about him makes me want to beat him up some more. We can always give him another visit. Hell, we can even see him after this. Why don't we cut off his fingers so that hell lose qualifications to even work as a soldier? I bet he won't even fight back. Once Princess Xiu realizes how much of a cowardly bastard that soldier is, she'll definitely stop paying attention to him. As Xiu Mei overheard their conversation, her expression immediately darkened, and her steps toward the room hastened. Stop right there and Aiden, Your Royal Highness. What are you doing here? The guard standing watch tried to stop her from approaching the room but instantly gave up when they took a closer look at her beautiful yet terrifying face. Bang! Without saying a word to the guards, Xiu Mei kicked down the doors like a barbarian, startling everyone in the room. Which bastard dares? Fuck. How dare you startle this young master? I'll have your entire family executed. The young masters in the room stopped their speech halfway when they saw Xiu Mei standing before the broken door with clenched fists, their faces filled with disbelief and shock, looking like they had just seen a ghost. Princess Xiu. What are you doing here? However, these young masters couldn't care less why Xiu Mei was there. They only wanted to know if she had overheard their loud conversation just now. Of course, they had an idea judging by the way she kicked down the doors and her chilling aura. Xiu Mei was the first to break the silence, speaking in a cold tone. Damaging my future husband's face is already punishable by death, but to think you would even consider doing something as heinous as robbing him of his future. I'll have you bastards executed immediately. Without any warning, Xiu Mei exuded immense killing intent as she jumped to the nearest young master, punching him directly in the face, and sending him flying. Despite her small and seemingly delicate figure, Xiu Mei possessed the cultivation of a peak spirit grandmaster. The one who received her punch felt his face dent inward before his vision darkened. Princess Xiu. Please calm down. We were only joking. The young masters showed zero signs of wanting to fight back. In fact, they were all older than Xiu Mei by several years, but their cultivation was only between peak spirit master and mid-level spirit grandmaster. None of them were strong enough to defeat her even if they fought without caring about her status. Ah! My fingers are bending backward. One of the young masters screamed in pain after trying to block Xiu Mei's fist. Another was struck directly in the mouth, shattering most of his teeth. Ah! My leg! Xiu Mei, who was also known as the Gentle Princess, was no different than a barbarian at this moment, her small and smooth hand stained and dripping with fresh blood. Omicron M. In just a few minutes, Xiu Mei had brutally crushed 5 young masters without breaking a sweat. If the guards hadn't stopped her at the very end, she wouldn't have hesitated to act upon her words and executed them on that day. What transpired at the restaurant was spread throughout the continent like wildfire, shocking every individual who heard it. The Xiu family expected Xiu Mei's image and reputation to plummet like a boulder. However, to their surprise, her actions had actually significantly improved her reputation, especially among the citizens within their own city. The troublemakers she had dealt with had caused so much trouble for the people that everybody dreamed of giving them a taste of their own medicine but couldn't, due to obvious reasons. Long live Princess Xiu for dealing with those troublemakers. Ha ha ha. This news is worth a grand celebration. If only they were killed. That would have been even better. However, while the citizens celebrated, the families of these troublemakers immediately sought reparation from the Xiu family, and their friendly relationship that was slowly built over thousands of years vanished in a single day. These families were not small backgrounds and could threaten even the Xiu family if they worked together, so it brought no small headache to the Xiu family. The Xiu family immediately tried to repair their relationship, but these families never intended to do so and had always coveted the Xiu family's power. Now that they had the opportunity and the excuse, they established another faction together in hopes of replacing the Xiu family. C1423 Unprecedented Genius. Chapter 1423 Unprecedented Genius 1423 Unprecedented Genius, Xiu Mei, because of your reckless actions, we've lost several powerful allies. Even worse, they have formed an alliance that will now directly challenge us. At this rate, there will be war, and our victory isn't guaranteed. Emperor Xiu sighed in front of his beloved daughter. He would have never imagined that his most precious and gentle daughter would cause such trouble, and it was all for a single soldier. Can we even call them allies when they have clearly planned on opposing us for some time now? If I hadn't acted and exposed their true faces, we wouldn't have known about it until we had a sword stabbed in our back. Xiu Mei rebuked. The room fell silent after Xiu Mei's words. Your Majesty, I have to agree with the princess on this matter. Her actions and reasoning aside, it showed us the true colors of those traitorous bastards. The Li family and the others would have eventually stabbed us in the back if given the chance, regardless if Princess Xiu had beaten their children or not. We should immediately start preparing to deal with them. One of the most trusted and experienced royal advisors there said. Not just that. Those families are rumored to have some shady business running in the shadows. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to secure any solid evidence that could incriminate them yet, said one of their generals. I am actually glad that the princess had done what she did. Those children are infamous troublemakers. We've received a mountain of complaints from the citizens because of them. Moreover, it exposed their true colors to us, allowing us to take action faster. The majority of people in the room expressed their support for Xiu Mei. Seeing this, Emperor Xiu could no longer find it in him to punish her and sighed, You got lucky this time, Xiu Mei. I won't punish you as the emperor, but as your father, I have to ensure you won't do something so reckless again. That young soldier who made you do this. I forbid you from seeing him again. What? But father. Xiu Mei immediately tried to protest. But she was quickly rejected. If you agree to never see him again, I will allow him to continue working as a soldier for us. However, if you refuse, I will have him removed immediately. The choice is yours. Xiu Mei clenched her teeth in frustration. Despite her ability to defeat those young masters, she remained powerless against her father's authority. Emperor Xiu could have Xian executed for encouraging Xiu Mei's actions, leaving her with no recourse but to lament her situation. I understand. I will not see him again, but you have to keep your promise and not touch him. If you break this promise, I will hate you forever. Xiu Mei said before turning around and stomping out of the room in anger. Since that day, Xiu Mei kept her promise and did not approach Xian once. However, she would occasionally sneak a peek at him from afar to ensure that he was still there, and Emperor Xiu did not break his promise. Xian knew that Xiu Mei's disappearance was most likely related to what she did for him and refrained from even mentioning her name, as he was worried about stirring the hornet's nest. Of course, he would notice someone staring at him from afar from time to time, but he pretended to be oblivious to it for obvious reasons. Thank you, Your Royal Highness, for protecting me. I, Xian, swear to protect you until my last breath. After making that vow to himself, Xian intensified his training regimen, pushing himself to the brink of exhaustion each day until he collapsed from sheer fatigue. 2.5 years passed in the blink of an eye. It has been 4 years since Xian became a soldier for the Xiu family. He recently turned 16, officially becoming an adult. He also reached the realm of Spirit King with unprecedented speed, shocking the entire army. Moreover, he mastered every weapon known to man, becoming a powerful force that could fight those several levels above his own cultivation. The reputation of the prodigious talent Xian had reached every corner of the Xiu family, earning admiration even from the emperor himself. I knew he was talented even before he started his cultivation, but to think I almost threw away such a monster. I'm so glad that I didn't quietly get rid of him that day. Emperor Xiu sighed out loud before the presence of several individuals. Xian. He started training for the Royal Guard a year after he joined us and graduated a year later, becoming the youngest Royal Guard in our army's history at the age of 14, said the general of the army, who also held Xian in high regard. He continued, He's just turned 16 and he can already fight me toe-to-toe despite having a lower cultivation base. I have never seen a monster like him before. We should properly secure him within the Xiu family before it's too late. Our situation with the 7 Heavenly Order has only been worsening for the past 3 years. We'll need his strength when war eventually breaks out in the near future, suggested the royal advisor. Indeed, agreed the emperor, his expression grave. Xianxia's talent is our greatest hope against the impending storm. We must ensure his loyalty and commitment to our cause. However, how should we go about this? The easiest and most common method would be to give him one of our daughters. I have 3 daughters, but they are all married, said the general in a regretful tone. I have 2 daughters. One was recently married and the other is only 10 years old. The royal advisor sighed. I only have sons, said another royal advisor. I have a daughter who is 17 years old and not married, but she already fancies some disciple from the Grand Sword Academy, said the royal treasurer. You should introduce your daughter to Tian, royal treasurer. I'm sure she'll like him better than that disciple, Emperor Xiu suggested. However, the royal treasurer shook his head and sighed. It's not that simple. She may not be married, but she's already given her body to that disciple, and they plan on getting married once that disciple becomes a core disciple. You should have said that first. Emperor Xiu sighed. Anyways, does anyone here have a daughter who isn't married and who is still pure? Xian is an unprecedented genius who probably won't appear again in our lifetime. The royal advisor there suddenly raised his hand and spoke, Your Majesty, what about Princess Xiu? If I recall correctly, she was pretty close with Tian before that incident with the families from the 7 Heavenly Order. Xiu Mei? Impossible. I will let him have anyone but her. He immediately refuted. But Your Majesty, we don't have anyone else. Furthermore, it will pretty much guarantee that Tian will stay loyal to the Xiu family if his wife is Xiu Mei, who is of direct lineage. Very quickly, the others started voicing their approval of Xiu Mei and Tian's marriage despite being responsible for their separation several years ago. C1424 Engagement. Chapter 1424 Engagement 1424 Engagement, Your Majesty, since this conversation is related to Princess Xiu's future, we should have the person in question here with us. I'd like to hear her opinion on this matter, as well. The royal treasurer said. No. I don't care what you guys say. You will not convince me to sell my beloved daughter. Emperor Xiu exclaimed, remaining adamant. But nobody is telling Your Majesty to sell Princess Xiu. If the princess fancies Tian, everything is fine. Or does Your Majesty plan on keeping Princess Xiu single for the rest of her life? One of the generals asked. Emperor Xiu clenched his teeth in frustration, but he was unable to answer the general's question. Naturally, he couldn't let Xiu Mei remain alone forever, but he also couldn't imagine anyone being worthy of her. After spending several hours convincing the emperor, they summoned Xiu Mei's presence into the room and explained the situation to her. So, in order to ensure that Tian's loyalty remains with the Xiu family, we have decided to find him a partner. I will marry him. Xiu Mei gave her response before they could even finish explaining the situation. Let us finish. No. I will be the one to marry him. That's why you called me here, right? My answer is yes. Xiu Mei spoke without hesitation, her eyes flickering with excitement. Xiu Mei's enthusiasm left the emperor utterly speechless, even devastated. However, he was unable to find the strength to talk her out of it. Why him? Emperor Xiu eventually found the courage to ask her this simple question. Why? I don't know when I started looking at him with interest, but I have been watching him grow ever since he was brought back by the other soldiers. He's a very earnest and hard-working individual, but his real charms only appear when you really get to know him. Xiu Mei closed her eyes and recalled the first time she coincidentally laid eyes on Tian, who was training alone even before the morning sun rose. Xian's young presence piqued her interest, so she asked around and learned of his background as an abandoned child who was adopted by mountain bandits. Since then, she occasionally checked in on Xian's progress, and before she knew it, they were chatting and laughing together like best friends. Honestly, I think it was love at first sight. I already decided to make him my husband years ago, so I won't allow another woman to have him. Xiu glared at her father with a serious expression. Seeing this, Emperor Xiu worried that Xiu might do something drastic like last time if he meddled with her love affairs. If you're this stubborn about it, I will have no choice but to allow it. In the end, Emperor Xiu waved the white flag and approved of their relationship. Thank you, father. Xiu immediately stormed out of the room and went to look for Xian. Since Xian could always be seen training in the same area, Xiu had no trouble and found him instantly. Xian, she called out to him. Xian was startled by her sudden voice and dropped the weapon he was training with and turned around to see Xiu standing right behind him with a bashful smile on her face. Why, Your Royal Highness? Why are you here? He asked her, looking truly puzzled by her presence. After all, they haven't seen each other in almost 3 years. Xiu raised her hands with 2 fingers pressed together into a cross and said, "Bu you. I told you to stop addressing me so coldly. Call me Xiu Mei." Xian was utterly speechless. In the 3 years that he hadn't seen her, Xiu had grown into a devastating beauty that could collapse even cities with her smile alone. Yet, her character remained almost the same as 3 years ago. You're, Xiu, you need to leave before someone sees you here with me. I don't want to get you in trouble again. Xian picked up his weapon and returned to training, acting like he never even noticed her. However, Xiu pounced on his body and embraced him from behind. Xiu, what are you doing? He cried out loud, feeling 2 soft objects pressing against his sweaty back. You don't need to worry about that anymore. I have received my father's permission to see you again. Let's go somewhere to catch up. We haven't spoken to each other in almost 3 years, after all. Before Xian could even respond, Xiu had already dragged him away from his training spot. Xian could only wear a bittersweet smile on his face as he allowed her to drag him off without any resistance. Xiu took Xian to an old spot where they used to meet frequently. They spent several hours catching up on their lives, with Xiu doing most of the talking, as Xian's days were primarily consumed by training. However, Xiu did not bring up their marriage the entire time from the beginning to end. In her mind, even without Emperor Xiu's approval, they would have ended up together, as if it was her fate to be with him. Over the next 2 years, Xiu spent nearly every day by Xian's side. Whether she was quietly observing him train from a distance or sharing laughter with him, every moment they spent together held equal significance in her heart. In 2 years, their relationship underwent a significant transformation, culminating in an engagement. However, it was Xiu who took the bold step of proposing to Tian. Tian refused at first due to the difference in their status and Xiu's exalted background, but Xiu reassured him that they would have the emperor's blessing. Sure enough, Emperor Xiu personally approached Tian that very day to congratulate him on their engagement. I will leave my daughter in your hands, Tian. If you dare make her cry or fail to protect her, I will come after you even after death. I swear that I will protect her with my life, Your Majesty. Who are you calling Your Majesty? I am your father-in-law now. Call me father. Why yes, father. C1425 Xian's First Battle. Chapter 1425 Xian's First Battle. 1425 Xian's First Battle. While Tian and Xiu became engaged, their relationship wasn't officially announced or acknowledged yet. The reasoning was simple. They decided to wait until Tian had gained sufficient fame and reputation before making their engagement public. If the Xiu family were to announce the engagement of their prized jewel to a common soldier during a time of war with the Seven Heavenly Order, they risked ridicule and mockery. While Tian had gained fame as a prodigy within the Xiu family, this knowledge was kept internal, and few outside their circle were aware of his talents. Xian, our situation with the 7 Heavenly Order has finally reached the point of war. I will send you into battle so you can acquire experience and make a name for yourself. Do you object? Emperor Xiu asked him. I object. Why do you have to send him when there are countless other soldiers? It's too dangerous. Xiu may refuse to send her beloved to war, fearing the possibility of him getting hurt or, even worse, losing his life. However, Xian placed his hand on her shoulder and said, Please, Xiu Mei, don't be like this. This is what I've been trained for. If I can't fulfill the purpose I've dedicated many years to, then what meaning does my existence hold? Well said. The general exclaimed with an excited smile on his face. Xian turned to look at Emperor Xiu and continued with a resolute face, I accept, Your Majesty, no, please, let me go to war with the 7 Heavenly Order. I have a debt to repay them, after all. Emperor Xiu nodded with a calm smile, very well. Then you will be part of our first battle with them. Immediately prepare for departure. As you command, Your Majesty. Once they returned to their room, Xiu Mei asked, Is there really no way I can convince you to stay here with me? Xian, noticing that she was crying, walked over and wiped her tears. Xiu Mei, the 7 Heavenly Order threatens the Xiu family and your safety. As your soldier and future husband, it's only natural for me to fight them to defend our family. If the Emperor had heard such words, he would definitely be jumping in joy over how successful their plan was. I couldn't raise my hand at those bullies back then because they were allies, but now that they are our enemy, I won't hesitate to get rid of them like you wanted me to. Xian. Xiu Mei suddenly propelled herself forward and gave him a passionate kiss on the lips. I want to give you something before you leave for the war. She started removing her clothes, her face flushed with redness. Once she was fully naked, she grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the bed. Xian's eyes widened at her actions. However, he didn't reject it and followed her to the bed, where they passionately embraced each other and connected for the first time. They made love to each other for several days straight until it was time for Xian to leave. On the battlefield several thousand miles away from the Xiu family, Xian stood in a formation as they faced the 7 Heavenly Order's army, which was 3 times larger in size. Heavens! Those 7 Heavenly Order bastards have violated the agreed-upon number of soldiers to be sent into battle on our very first engagement. This bodes ill for us. The soldiers were both shocked and incensed by the 7 Heavenly Order's blatant disregard for honor. In order to prevent a full-fledged war between 2 massive powers, they often resort to small-scale skirmishes with a predetermined number of soldiers and cultivators until one side either surrenders or depletes its forces. For their first battle, they agreed to send only 1,000 soldiers with a single spirit sovereign, 3 spirit kings, 20 spirit lords, 200 spirit grandmasters, and the rest spirit masters. However, the 7 Heavenly Order blatantly disregarded their agreement and sent 3 times the amount with 3 spirit sovereigns, 9 spirit kings, 60 spirit lords, 600 spirit grandmasters, and over 2,000 spirit masters. These sons of bitches. We need to get reinforcements. They won't make it. We'll all be dead before reinforcements arrive. What should we do? Run away? While the Xiu family's soldiers contemplated running away, the only spirit sovereign within their ranks suddenly stepped forward and pointed his silver spear at the enemy. So what if they outnumber us 3-1? They are just a bunch of cowards who cannot even fight fairly. How strong can they be? Follow me. I will pave the way to victory for us. Without waiting for a response, Xian fearlessly charged at the enemy. He made it halfway to the enemy without looking back to see if anyone had followed him. In his mind, even if he had to fight the entire army alone, it would not stop him. Ha ha ha. Charging at us alone, what a foolish bastard. Who is this idiot? How did he manage to reach Spirit Sovereign? The 3 Spirit Sovereigns laughed and mocked Xian openly. I can handle a dumbass like him by myself. One of the Spirit Sovereigns said as he confronted Xian. However, the spirit sovereign was slain by Xian after exchanging 3 mere blows with him. It didn't feel like a fight between spirit sovereigns and was more like a true master bullying a toddler. This unexpected result shocked both sides to their core. Who is that soldier? How come I don't recognize him? Isn't that Xian? He's a royal guard for the Xiu family. But he looks so young. He has to be less than 20 years old. I have heard rumors of him, but I have never seen him fight before. The Xiu family soldiers were overwhelmed with shock after witnessing Xian in action for the first time. Meanwhile, the 7 Heavenly Order's soldiers were trembling from fear. Seeing this, the remaining 2 spirit sovereigns went to confront Xian together in hopes of raising their fellow soldiers' morale. However, they also fell to Xian in less than 10 strikes. Holy fuck. He defeated all 3 spirit sovereigns by himself. He's even unharmed. We have a chance. We can defeat these cheating bastards. The morale of the Xiu family soldiers soared when they witnessed Xian's overwhelming strength, and they swiftly followed him into battle against the enemy soldiers. Once Xian defeated the enemy's spirit sovereigns, their morale plummeted to rock bottom, leaving them vulnerable to the onslaught of the Xiu family soldiers, who swiftly overwhelmed them with ease. In less than 2 hours, the Xiu family's army emerged triumphant with only a few casualties. Meanwhile, the forces of the 7 Heavenly Order were utterly vanquished despite outnumbering their opponents. Word of Xian's unparalleled prowess on the battlefield quickly spread throughout the 4th heaven like wildfire, garnering him widespread acclaim and respect among both allies and adversaries alike. Ha ha ha. You should have been there to witness Xian's prowess. None of the enemy's spirit sovereigns were able to land a hit on him. The way he just marched toward the enemy alone without any hesitation and looking back. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. In the blink of an eye, Xian became a celebrity within the Xiu family's army. C1426 God of War. Chapter 1426 God of War 1426 God of War, amazing work, Xian. You have exceeded our expectations. Emperor Xiu praised him when he returned from the battlefield. Xian. Xiu Mei flung herself into his embrace the moment she saw him. Ahem. Control yourself, Xiu Mei. You are not alone, and your relationship with him is still a secret. Emperor Xiu awkwardly cleared his throat. Who cares? Everybody in this room is aware of our relationship, anyway. Xiu Mei said, refusing to let Xian go. But pretty much everyone outside of this circle is already aware of their secret relationship. The royal advisor and the others thought to themselves as they looked at Xiu Mei and Xian. Xiu Mei's demeanor around Xian spoke volumes, leaving little doubt about the intimacy of their relationship to anyone observing, even a blind man. The only thing lacking was official confirmation. Sometime later, Xian asked, so when is the next battle? Xiu Mei looked at him with wide eyes and said, you want to participate in another battle? Isn't one enough? The entire city is already aware of your prowess, so why would you want to participate in another battle? Xian then said, I won't stop until the 7 Heavenly Order is gone. I like your dedication. The generals laughed out loud. 12:09 I like your dedication. The generals laughed out loud. Emperor Xiu nodded, I will notify you when the next battle is decided. Due to the 7 Heavenly Orders disregarding their agreement, things would only get more complicated. After all, the Xiu family could no longer trust them. In the end, they scheduled the second battle to take place the following month with 2,000 soldiers on each side. However, wary of the 7 Heavenly Orders' potential treachery, the Xiu family stationed their reinforcements a few miles away from the battlefield. Should the 7 Heavenly Orders breach the agreement once more, the Xiu family was prepared to swiftly deploy their reinforcements without hesitation. The 7 Heavenly Orders showed up with exactly 2,000 soldiers this time, but they also had reinforcements stationed not far away from the battlefield. Look at that young man in front of the formation. That must be Tian, the unstoppable tyrant. The soldiers of the Seven Heavenly Orders swiftly recognized Xian's presence within their formation, dubbing him Unstoppable Tyrant due to his formidable performance in the previous battle. Just like the previous battle, only a single spirit sovereign was allowed to partake in the battle. However, once the battle began, the Seven Heavenly Orders revealed that they had hidden 9 additional spirit sovereigns within their formation. Kill the Unstoppable Tyrant. Despite the potential damage to their reputation, the Seven Heavenly Order couldn't afford to let Xian dominate the battlefield once more. Therefore, they resolved to swiftly eliminate him during the second battle. Humph. I knew I could count on you cowardly bastards to use such dirty tactics. Xian sneered in disdain when he realized that he was surrounded by 10 spirit sovereigns. Yet, in less than 5 minutes, Xian slew all of them while suffering only minor injuries. After killing the spirit sovereigns, Xian's prowess on the battlefield was unmatched, and the battle concluded before the Xiu family could even summon their reinforcements. Once again, Xian carved through the enemy forces like an unstoppable force of nature. With each swing of his spear, more than 20 enemy soldiers would fall, their morale shattered by Xian's relentless onslaught. These dirty fucking bastards. If it weren't for Xian's overwhelming talent, would have lost my son-in-law today. Emperor Xiu and the others expressed their anger after learning of the situation. Damn it. Your Majesty, let's forget about these skirmishes and launch a full-scale attack on these bastards. Yeah. If these bastards want to play dirty, let's show them how dirty we can get. However, the Xiu family quickly realized that their concerns would be alleviated without them having to take any action. We never intended on meddling with your war, but we cannot ignore such disgraceful behavior being displayed before our eyes in our own continent. If the Seven Heavenly Order continues their nonsense, we will join the Xiu family to get rid of you pests. When the neutral sects and other factions of the Fourth Heaven that have been watching from the sidelines learned of the Seven Heavenly Order's dishonorable actions, they united together and threatened to assist the Xiu family, leaving the Seven Heavenly Orders with no choice but to reconsider their actions. After being warned by their neutral neighbors, the Seven Heavenly Orders refrained from employing underhanded tactics and committed to engaging in future battles with honesty and integrity. However, if the Seven Heavenly Order couldn't defeat Xian with underhanded tactics, they had no hope of defeating him in a fair fight. A dozen battles later, the Seven Heavenly Orders suffered 12 crushing defeats at the hands of Xian. Despite hiring renowned Spirit Sovereign and Spirit Enlightenment mercenaries from across the Divine Heaven, the Seven Heavenly Orders found no success in defeating Xian. Meanwhile, with each victory, Xian's reputation soared, his name echoing throughout the Fourth Heaven like some kind of deity. The war between the Seven Heavenly Orders and the Xiu family lasted over a decade, spanning more than 100 battles. Xian participated in every single battle, grew stronger after each battle, and emerged victorious in all of them. Moreover, cultivators from around the world would spectate these battles and offer Xian an exalted position within their faction, but he respectfully declined all of them. In the end, Xian stormed the Seven Heavenly Orders headquarters and personally executed the young masters who bullied him in the past. After the war concluded, Xian was crowned the nickname God of War by those around him. His engagement with Xiu Mei was also officially announced by the Xiu family, and they performed the marriage ceremony in the same year, becoming husband and wife, which surprised nobody. C1427 The Beginning of the End. Chapter 1427 The Beginning of the End. 1427 The Beginning of the End. Once again, congratulations on your marriage. Emperor Xiu said to Xian after the wedding in a private meeting. Thank you for allowing me to marry Xiu Mei, father. You will not regret this. Xian said with a smile on his face. Ha ha ha. Why are you being so humble out of nowhere? It's weird. Emperor Xiu laughed out loud. After chatting for a while, Emperor Xiu spoke with a serious expression on his face. Let's talk about why I called you here, Xian. Now that you are officially part of our family, do you have any desire to rule your own territory? My own territory? Xian raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. Indeed. You are no longer just a soldier with a duty. Now that you are one of us, you have two options. 1. Remain here and compete with the others for my position as its emperor. Or 2. Leave and build your own empire. Of course, I will support you regardless of your decision. After hearing his choices, Xian, without hesitation, responded, I will leave this place to build my own empire. Emperor Xiu smiled and said, I knew you would say that. As much as I hate to admit it, this place is too small for you, Xian. You're already stronger than me by an entire realm. Go build your own empire, one that is worthy of the one called God of War. Your talents will surely bring you to a place where even I have to tilt my head and look up. What about Xiu Mei? Xian then asked. Why are you asking me? You're responsible for her now, so make your own decisions. Emperor Xiu quickly said. So you won't be upset if I decide to take her with me? Of course, I will be upset. However, she is already an adult. If she wants to follow you to the edge of the world, I have no authority over her decision. Xian went to speak with Xiu Mei after his conversation with Emperor Xiu ended. To his surprise, Xiu Mei didn't object to his decision at all. In fact, she even encouraged it. Why do you look so surprised? I know you're not the type to linger in this small place when you could be doing much bigger things, not that this small city could handle someone like you. As a matter of fact, I have been wanting to leave this place for some time now and planned on speaking to you about relocating soon. Xiu Mei said. After receiving Xiu Mei's answer, the two of them returned to Emperor Xiu to further plan their departure. Do you have a location in mind? If it's within my power, I can help you with acquiring the land. Emperor Xiu said. Xian pondered for a moment before responding, do you know where the soldiers found me? I want to build a city around there. That's a little too close to this city, which could cause problems. However, there's a small village not too far away from that place. Since I own that territory, I can arrange it so that you will become its new lord. Emperor Xiu said. Xian nodded, let's do that. Thus, Emperor Xiu transferred said territory to Xian, who immediately relocated to the village with Xiu Mei. When news of Xian's departure spread, many of the soldiers who had fought alongside him expressed a desire to follow him. However, if Emperor Xiu allowed them to join Xian, too many soldiers would leave, risking the collapse of their army. Yet, Emperor Xiu decided to lend 10,000 soldiers to Xian for the time being. The seasons changed swiftly, and in the blink of an eye, a decade had passed since Xian started managing his own territory. In just a decade, Xian successfully transformed a small village into a bustling city with a population of 20,000. Additionally, he established a small yet formidable army of 100 soldiers that could rival 5,000 soldiers, personally overseeing their training and development. Dong Yi, I am promoting you to general. Congratulations on becoming the first to reach such a rank in our army. Xian said to the stern yet loyal middle-aged man before him. Dong Yi immediately got on his knees and bowed, this unworthy one is eternally grateful to the city lord for this opportunity. I will not disappoint you. A decade, 2 decades, 50 years, after a century, the city of Xian had grown to rival even the largest cities in the fourth heaven with a population of over 10 million. They expanded their territory, stretching its boundaries far beyond their initial limits, while their military prowess became unmatched, casting a formidable shadow over the entire region. Numerous factions have attempted to halt its expansion or conquer the city of Xian, yet they were all thwarted before even nearing the city's front gates, allowing the citizens to live a peaceful life with a deep sense of security. Xian's influence and stature had long surpassed that of the Xiu family, yet he steadfastly refused to ascend to the status of emperor, opting instead to remain a humble city lord. As for Xiu Mei, she spent half of her time assisting Xian in managing the city amongst other things, and the other half improving her cultivation so that she could stay in this world with her beloved husband longer. While Xiu Mei couldn't even dream of catching up to Xian's cultivation, it was enough for her to live a very long life. 100 years, 300 years, 900 years later. The city of Xian stopped expanding after 250 years of establishment, but it continued to increase its citizens' quality of life and military might. Xian stopped working as much and started spending most of his time with Xiu Mei, who gave up working entirely after she became pregnant with his child. It's a girl, Xian. What should we name her? I am not good with names, so I will let you decide, then I will think of something. However, halfway into Xiu Mei's pregnancy, a messenger bearing the Celestial Emperor's medallion entered the city of Xian with a simple yet terrifying message for its city lord, Tian. Unbeknownst to Tian at that time, this marked the beginning of the end of his seemingly perfect life. C1428 The First Celestial Emperor. Chapter 1428 The First Celestial Emperor 1428 The First Celestial Emperor, messenger from the Celestial Palace. What purpose do you have here in my city? Tian spoke as he gazed upon the messenger from his seat. The messenger looked at Tian's arrogant presence with a slight frown on his face, but he refrained from saying anything, as his mission was to recruit Tian. I am here on behalf of His Majesty, the Celestial Emperor. The messenger said as he retrieved a scroll and unsealed it. Tian, one recognized as the God of War, immortal of the battlefield, your war stories have reached even I, the first Celestial Emperor, Emperor of the Divine Heavens. As an admirer of your indomitable presence on the battlefield, I hereby offer you a position in my celestial army as its Supreme General. As the Supreme General, you will have unimaginable authority within the army, second only to I, the Celestial Commander. Should you accept this position, I shall grant you unlimited wealth, unfathomable power, widespread fame, as well as any single wish within my authority as the ruler of the divine heaven. Tian listened to the Celestial Emperor's message with a nonchalant expression on his face. If it were anybody else in his shoes, they would have been jumping up and down in excitement over such a generous offer. The position of Celestial Emperor came into existence about 100,000 years ago when the patriarch of the most powerful family in the divine heaven decided to rule over the divine heaven. Despite facing considerable opposition from various factions and individuals who questioned the idea of bestowing such immense power and authority upon a single individual, the patriarch had an equal amount of support from those who stood to gain from it. Thus, the Celestial Emperor came into existence with half of the divine heaven against it and the other half supporting it. With the passage of time, the influence of the Celestial Emperor extended its reach, gradually engulfing the entire divine heaven. The power of the Celestial Emperor grew to such an extent that defiance against it became an act of inevitable self-destruction, as his enemies faced swift and merciless judgment, leaving little room for opposition or resistance. The unchecked power and authority wielded by the Celestial Emperor became a tool for exploitation, not only by the Emperor himself but also by those who surrounded him, leading to corruption and manipulation on an unprecedented scale. Under the dominion of the Celestial Emperor, cultivation resources, precious treasures, and even the natural phenomena of the world fell under its exclusive control. Those who did not submit to its authority were barred from accessing these vital assets, forcing all to pledge allegiance or face deprivation. In response to the tyrannical rule of the Celestial Emperor, countless individuals came together and challenged its oppressive regime, sparking the conflict known as the Heavenly War of Immortals and Gods. The Heavenly War of Immortals and Gods lasted for tens of thousands of years and was nearing its end with the Celestial Emperor having the upper hand. However, the Celestial Emperor was impatient and wanted to end the war as soon as possible, so he sought out Tian, a renowned warlord who had risen to prominence less than 1,000 years ago, intrigued by tales of his achievements. However, after receiving the Celestial Emperor's offer, Tian scoffed inwardly at the messenger and spoke in a calm manner, I don't need such an exalted position, so I will have to decline his offer. Tian actually wanted to curse out the messenger and the Celestial Emperor, but he refrained from doing so. Enraged by Tian's refusal, the messenger's composure shattered, his voice booming with rage, you arrogant little bastard. How dare you refuse the Celestial Emperor's generous offer? You are just a nobody from some backwater background. How dare you? Dong Yi, who was standing beside Tian immediately drew his sword and pointed it at the messenger. However, Tian quickly gestured for Dong Yi to stop and said, indeed, I am a nobody. A frog in a well. Therefore, it wouldn't make any sense for me to accept the Celestial Emperor's offer. You may return to the Celestial Emperor and tell him that. Good. You will regret this. The messenger did not linger and immediately left. I knew the Celestial Emperor would make a move on us eventually. Xian sighed afterward. The Celestial Emperor is truly overbearing and arrogant. Even his lackeys are disgusting. I completely understand why there is a war against him right now. Dong Yi sneered in disdain. Prepare the army just in case they want to start something. We will most likely see that messenger again. Xian said a moment later. As you command. Dong Yi bowed before leaving. True to expectations, several weeks later, the messenger returned with another offer. However, it was a far cry from the previous one. Instead of the prestigious position of Supreme General, the Celestial Emperor now offered Xian the humble role of a foot soldier, a drastic downgrade from his initial proposal. Xian laughed at the offer and made a soldier turn away the messenger without even seeing him. The messenger returned a month later, but this time there was no offer to negotiate. The Celestial Emperor's message was clear and ominous: either Xian worked for him or faced utter destruction. In response to the threat, Xian killed the messenger and sent his decapitated head back to the Celestial Palace. A week later, hundreds of Celestial Emperor's soldiers showed up at the front gate with the intention of going to war with them. Naturally, Xian had prepared for the Celestial Emperor's confrontation and led his army to face their enemies, quickly slaughtering them. Xian's refusal to bow to the Celestial Emperor quickly became the talk of the divine heaven, reigniting the flames of the dying heavenly war. After experiencing Xian's prowess firsthand, the Celestial Emperor quickly realized that he had been trying to tame an uncontrollable monster, deeply regretting it. C1429 The Birth of Evil God. Chapter 1429 The Birth of Evil God. 1429 The Birth of Evil God. Why, Your Majesty? That arrogant bastard slew the soldiers we sent again. At this rate, we'll lose all of our spare soldiers to him. The current Supreme General of the Celestial Army reported to the Celestial Emperor. Frustration clenched the Celestial Emperor's teeth together. If not for the diversion of his main army in the heavenly war of immortals and gods, he could have easily crushed Xian. But alas, his only option was to dispatch his reserve forces, as his enemies could potentially change the tide of their war if he weakened his main army even slightly. It's been 6 years since Xian openly defied the Celestial Emperor. Tens of thousands of soldiers from the Celestial Emperor had perished to Xian, who was only becoming more formidable with every fight. If I don't take care of this little bastard soon, he'll definitely become a real thorn in my side. The Celestial Emperor wanted to recruit Xian to end the war quicker, but he ended up making Xian an enemy, who now had the potential to prolong the war. The realization that Xian could be the catalyst for his downfall drove the Celestial Emperor to the brink of madness. How dare a mere city lord defy me, the Celestial Emperor? Supreme General, I don't care what it takes or how much you dirty your hands. I want that bastard to despair. I want him to regret defying me. While you distract him with some soldiers, sneak into the city and remove his loved ones from existence. The Celestial Emperor roared, his eyes bloodshot. As Your Majesty commands. The Supreme General did not have an ounce of hesitation within his voice despite being given such an order. The following month, 10,000 soldiers arrived at the city of Xian, looking more ominous than ever. When Xian saw this, he immediately left the city to confront them as usual. Of course, he left behind some soldiers to guard the city and his beloved wife just in case. Unfortunately, the Supreme General was an existence that even Xian's strongest soldiers had no hopes of defeating in a group. Thus, the Supreme General sneaked into the city of Xian without alerting anyone, located Xian's living quarters, and silently killed all of the soldiers guarding it, before entering the building. Inside, a woman sat on the bed, silently caressing her round stomach that looked like it was about to burst at any moment. Who's there? Xiao Mei was immediately alerted when the formation around the building was suddenly destroyed. The door to her room was kicked down the next second, and a figure soaked in blood casually walked inside, his weapon still dripping with blood. Who are you? Xiao Mei could instantly tell at a glance that she was no match for this individual and that she had no hopes of escaping. I am your executioner, said the Supreme General in a cold voice. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because your husband offended someone he couldn't afford to offend, and now he will pay the price for defying His Majesty, the Celestial Emperor. Despite her seemingly helpless situation, Xiao Mei did not let fear control her and even smiled. I'm surprised it took you so long to come after me. Humph, the Supreme General coldly sneered as he slowly approached her. The Celestial Emperor's decision to dispatch the Supreme General to the city of Xian during a critical juncture of the heavenly war of immortals and gods risked their current advantage in the conflict. Yet, the Celestial Emperor deemed Tian Xian to be threatening enough to take such a risk. This is also why the Celestial Emperor only ordered the Supreme General to assassinate Xiao Mei, since he wouldn't be able to kill Tian Xian without revealing his presence there to their enemies. Ah. I'm truly sorry, my darling, for being such a useless wife and mother. Xiao Mei knew that fighting back or trying to escape would only be futile effort, so she used what little time she had left to think of Tian Xian and recall all of the time they'd spent together. Meanwhile, when Tian Xian sensed that the formation around his house had been destroyed in the midst of his fight with the Celestial Army, he, without any hesitation, abandoned the battlefield for the first time in his life as a soldier and rushed back to the city. Please let me make it back in time. He prayed inwardly until he returned home. When he arrived, he ignored the corpses that surrounded his house and immediately went inside the building. Xiao Mei. Are you okay? Tian Xian shouted as he rushed to her room. However, his movements froze when he reached the entrance to her room. Standing outside the broken entrance, he could see the horrific scene inside the room. There was blood splattered everywhere, staining the walls, ceiling, and furniture. And in the center of this room was a lifeless body that had its limbs severed. However, the true horror lay in the grotesque sight of the Buddha's stomach, savagely cut open and ripped apart to reveal the small, helpless figure nestled within. Seeing this gruesome scene, Tian Xian fell to his knees with a loud thud, his face filled with shock and despair. Xiao Mei, ah. Aha. Aha. Tian Xian released an inhuman cry that shook the entire city. Tears filled his eyes and flowed down his face like two streams during a rainstorm, quickly turning into blood a few moments later. Suddenly, Tian Xian stopped moving and collapsed into the puddle of blood beneath him. However, he hadn't lost consciousness. In fact, he was wide awake, and something mythical was happening inside his head. Memories of a life that he didn't recognize were flowing into his mind. Sometime later, Tian Xian slowly pushed himself off the floor, muttering in a low voice, Tian Yang. Huang Shaoli. Shura, as clarity returned to his mind, Tian Xian's fury surged like a tempest, his fists clenched so tightly that the bones within shattered under the force of his rage. Overwhelming killing intent and bloodlust emanated from him, so intense that it materialized into a thick crimson fog, shrouding the entire city in its ominous embrace, and his once brown eyes now glowed with a menacing red hue, as if they had been soaked in fresh blood. Celestial Emperor. I will not rest until I slaughter everyone around you and bathe in your blood. Thus, the one who would soon terrorize the divine heaven as the evil god was born. C1430 Tian Xian's Wrath. Chapter 1430 Tian Xian's Wrath. 1430 Tian Xian's Wrath. After experiencing the most traumatic event in his life, Tian Xian recalled his previous life and regained all of Tian Yang's memories. Once again, I was unable to protect my beloved. Tian Xian muttered in a dazed voice as he left the building. When Tian Xian walked outside, the crimson fog that shrouded the entire city like a blanket began thickening to the point where visibility was reduced to near zero, rendering it nearly impossible for anyone without divine sense to see beyond a few inches ahead. Furthermore, the bloodlust coming from Tian Xian was so immense that it suffocated everyone in the city, knocking many citizens unconscious, especially the mortals. This sudden and ominous phenomenon terrified all of the citizens, as it looked like doomsday had arrived. Xian ignored the chaos within the city and turned to look in the direction where the Celestial Emperor's soldiers were still engaged in a fierce fight with his own army. He flew into the air and soared toward the battlefield the next instant, leaving behind a trail of bloodlust that scattered in every direction, quickly covering the sky and causing the world to darken. Meanwhile, on the ongoing battlefield, the Celestial Army was slowly pushing back Xian's army after his sudden disappearance. "Where's the city lord?" "I don't know, but he suddenly took off with a nervous look on his face, and I have never seen such anxiety from him before." Look at the sky. "What's that?" One of the soldiers there pointed at the red sky when he noticed it. It didn't take long before nearly every soldier on the battlefield noticed the red sky, looking like someone had painted it with blood. That's killing intent. I have never seen such bloodlust before. I didn't know killing intent could materialize in such a manner. How much killing intent does it require to cause such a phenomenon? I would be more worried about the person exhibiting such bloodlust. The very next moment, a silhouette appeared in the distance. However, everyone was too distracted by the red sky to notice him. In the blink of an eye, this shadowy figure arrived at the battlefield and hurtled toward the battlefield without any pauses in alarming speed. Before anyone could react, the figure dove headlong into the ranks of the Celestial Army, shattering their formation in an instant. What the hell was that? Someone just invaded our formation. They must have a death wish. As Xian breached the rear lines of the Celestial Army, he found himself encircled by thousands of foes on all sides, with no allies in sight. However, this worked in Xian's favor, as this allowed him to go on a rampage without needing to worry about harming his allies by accident. After all, in Xian's enraged current state, discerning friends from foes was a luxury he couldn't afford. The moment Xian landed on the ground, he immediately started swinging his silver spear like a madman, killing everyone around him. Due to his immense killing intent that blocked the soldiers' views, they were forced to use divine sense to locate him. Moreover, the shocking amount of bloodlust caused even these seasoned warriors to freeze, hindering their movement and allowing Xian to kill them without any retaliation. The Celestial Army sent as a decoy became the first ones to experience Xian's wrath. As Xian killed everyone around him without discrimination, the soldiers' limbs and flesh flew all over the place, causing the sky to rain blood and human flesh. "Oh! Where the fuck did this monster come from?" It's Xian. The God of War is back." "What? But why is he in our rear formation? His army is on the opposite side." "I don't know what's going on, but we need to focus on him first. Once we kill Xian, the others will fall like flies without their commander." When the Celestial Army realized Xian had returned and even found himself amidst their ranks, they halted their advance toward the city of Xian and swarmed him like a colony of ants confronting a foreign intruder. Xian's army was left dumbfounded and puzzled when their enemy suddenly turned around and started running away. Wait. Where the hell do you think you are going? Hold on. I can sense a disturbance in the direction they are running to. This is the city lord's spiritual energy. He's finally returned. But why is he so far away from us? Who cares about the reason? We need to back him up. Thus, Xian's soldiers started chasing after the Celestial Army when they also realized that their commander was fighting the enemy by himself. However, when they could finally witness the scene of Xian slaughtering the Celestial Army like a mindless barbarian, the soldiers were left aghast, even terrified by his appearance. That's our city lord? He looks like a different person. What happened to him in the short amount of time that he left? Even I have never seen him like this before. Dong Yi said in a dazed voice as he watched Xian slaughter the enemy with a look of profound admiration on his face. Dong Yi has always admired Xian, but there was something different about the current Xian. Unlike the dignified and gentle nature he was familiar with, Xian currently gave off a barbaric, ruthless, and almost inhuman feeling, similar to that of a wild beast. No, even wild beasts would not be so vicious. He's more like an evil being, one that was born out of pure malice, an evil god. Dong Yi muttered, feeling unfathomable reverence toward Tian Xian's new appearance. Tian Xian's soldiers were perplexed once they saw Tian Xian's current appearance. They were unsure whether they should rush to his aid or hold back, considering his overwhelming aura of killing intent and the chaotic situation on the battlefield. Some hesitated, torn between their loyalty to Tian Xian and their fear of the dark energy emanating from him. I have a feeling that we'll also be killed if we interrupt him right now. Does he even need our help? It looks like he can deal with their entire army by himself. Just what in heaven's name happened to the city lord during his absence? His eyes even turned red. Was he bewitched by some kind of evil technique? That would explain his behavior, sort of. C1431 Creation of the Shadow Army. Chapter 1431 Creation of the Shadow Army. 1431 Creation of the Shadow Army. The more Tian Xian's army watched him massacre the Celestial Army, the less they wanted to interfere. In the end, his soldiers could only stand in the distance like a group of stone statues and watch as piles of corpses quickly formed into mountains. An hour later, Tian Xian lowered his spear after killing every single soldier from the Celestial Army. Some of the soldiers tried to escape toward the end of the battle when they realized that he was unkillable, but Tian Xian chased after each and every single one with a profound movement technique that he never displayed before until today. As Tian Xian stood in a sea of blood and beside mountains of corpses, he held a dazed look on his face. He stared at the red sky with his blood soaking every inch of his body, looking like he'd just jumped into a bath filled with blood. Despite the carnage he wrought upon the Celestial Emperor's soldiers, Tian Xian found no satisfaction in his actions. His bloodlust remained unquenched, soaring skyward like a relentless tempest, leaving him feeling no better than before. His soldiers remained distant from him, fearing that he might attack them if they got too close. However, a fearless individual eventually approached him and kneeled before him in the sea of blood. "My lord, what are your commands?" Dong Yi asked. After a moment of silence, without looking away from the sky, Tian Xian muttered in a low voice, "I am stepping down from the position of city lord, as I have to leave for a long, long time. I don't know when I will be back if I ever will. Dong Yi, I will leave the military and the city in your hands, but my lord, don't follow me." Before Dong Yi could even finish his sentence, Tian Xian flew toward the red sky and disappeared into it. Dong Yi was left speechless. He wanted to chase after Tian Xian, but he didn't dare to defy Tian Xian's order. In the end, Dong Yi could only relay Tian Xian's words to the other soldiers. The city lord left his position and won't return? What will happen to the city of Xian now? What about our military? Where did the commander go? Why did he suddenly abandon everything? Although these soldiers were filled with questions, they eventually understood the situation when they returned to the city and saw the scene at Tian Xian's house, who left in a hurry and never got the chance to clean up the mess at his house. Dong Yi and the others were overwhelmed with sorrow and anger when they saw the gruesome scene inside Tian Xian's house. Most of them were familiar with Xiu Mei and treated her as though she was a goddess, so one could imagine the shock they received when they saw what had happened to her and her unborn child. Unable to leave Xiu Mei in such a state, Dong Yi and the others gave her a proper burial and even held a mass funeral for her. Many hoped Tian Xian would show up during the funeral, but alas, he was nowhere to be seen. After the funeral, Dong Yi and the rest of the army gathered to discuss their future. The commander is most likely fighting the Celestial Emperor and his army all by himself right now. He left everything behind because he didn't want us to be targeted as well, damn it. How could we let such a thing happen to the city lord and fairy Xiu after everything they've done for us? We are so fucking useless. Isn't there anything we can do for the city lord? I refuse to sit still after what happened. After hearing the soldier's complaint, Dong Yi stepped forward and spoke in a grim voice. "I have a suggestion," he continued. "I am going to assist the Lord in his revenge. As powerful as our Lord may be, he cannot deal with the Celestial Emperor by himself. If you want to come with me, raise your hand. Otherwise, you may leave, as this will likely result in our deaths. The very next moment, every soldier who had fought alongside Xian raised their hands, their faces filled with determination. Someone then spoke, "But how can we assist him? We're all too weak. And the commander had specifically told us not to follow him." Dong Yi closed his eyes and pondered for several minutes before responding, "Indeed, we are too weak to do anything to the Celestial Emperor right now. However, things will not remain this way forever. Moreover, there are several ways to assist the Lord without letting him know." "That sounds good. I'm all for it. Then starting today, we'll move in the shadows and assist the Lord from a place he cannot see. We shall become the Shadow Army." "Yeah. Down with the Celestial Emperor and his lackeys. For the City Lord. For Fairy Xiu. For their child." This moment marked the birth of the Shadow Army, evil god's most fearsome and mysterious army that would play a massive role in helping Xian defeat the Celestial Emperor. Moreover, following Dong Yi and others' revelation of the dire circumstances to the rest of the city, the citizens rallied behind the cause, offering their unwavering support to the Shadow Army. The city of Xian, once the home of Xian, now served as the bedrock for the establishment of the Shadow Army. Together, they forged a network to gather information and resources to support the fight against the Celestial Emperor, eventually becoming Divine Heaven's most formidable and largest information-gathering network. Since Xian left the city of Xian and started hunting down the Celestial Army throughout the Divine Heaven, the Celestial Emperor stopped paying about them, allowing the city to grow without much hindrance. While many have tried to claim the city of Xian for themselves after news of Xian's departure spread, the Shadow Army made sure to keep the place untouched for Xian's return. Despite the absence of Xian, the Shadow Army remained as a formidable force, composed of veterans and prodigies who had been meticulously trained by him. United by a newfound purpose and vision, they continued to grow stronger with each passing day, fueled by their unwavering determination and commitment to their cause. C1432 Heaven's Defiance. Chapter 1432 Heaven's Defiance. 1432 Heaven's Defiance. Watch out. It's Xian, the evil god. One of the Celestial Army's soldiers cried out loud in a terrified voice when he noticed Xian's figure approaching their formation from a distance, carrying with him enough killing intent to scare even ghosts. Fuck. Why'd he have to show up now of all times? We were beginning to push back those Heaven's Defiance bastards. Another soldier cursed out loud. There's no way we can deal with the evil god and Heaven's Defiance at the same time. We're screwed. The forces opposing the Celestial Emperor and the Heavenly War of Immortals and Gods adopted the name, Heaven's Defiance, as a symbolic gesture, implying their defiance against the Celestial Emperor who claimed to represent heaven itself. As for the title Evil God, nobody seemed to know the origin of such a name, but it quickly spread throughout the divine heavens, becoming widely recognized and associated with Xian, who was once known as the God of War. When Xian arrived at the battlefield, wielding a spear in one hand and a sword in the other, he immediately began slaughtering the Celestial Army like a madman. Oh, shit. The evil god has appeared on our battlefield. We need to retreat before our own people get caught up in his bloodbath. Thank the Lord. If he hadn't shown up, we would have been in grave danger. Those from Heaven's Defiance, without hesitation, withdrew from the battle when they noticed Xian's presence on the battlefield. After all, Heaven's Defiance had already attempted to fight alongside Xian during their initial encounter. However, his relentless assault showed no regard for friend or foe, resulting in casualties among their own ranks. Despite suffering losses at Xian's hands, Heaven's Defiance refrained from seeking retribution and even tried to assist him on several other occasions. They recognized that targeting Xian would be counterproductive. After all, he was cutting down the Celestial Army at a rapid rate by himself and was their best hope of defeating the Celestial Emperor. While Xian chased after the scattering Celestial Army, Heaven's Defiance worked on stopping the Celestial Army from escaping. Ha ha ha. Where do you think you're going, Celestial Emperor's dogs? You think you can run away now? Look at you pathetic bastards. What happened to your arrogance from a minute ago? You have been shaking in your boots since the evil god showed up. Those from Heaven's Defiance laughed and mocked the Celestial Army's soldiers for their cowardice as they prevented the Celestial Army's escape, allowing Xian to slaughter them at a much faster pace. Eventually, Xian erased the Celestial Army from existence. After taking care of the Celestial Army, he immediately left the scene to find the next battlefield with the Celestial Army's presence, completely ignoring those from Heaven's Defiance. As for Heaven's Defiance, they could only silently admire Xian as they watched him leave. In their eyes, Xian appeared out of thin air one day and started slaughtering everyone working for the Celestial Emperor or had worked for him at one point. It didn't matter if they were the active Celestial Army or some small family that once worked with the Celestial Emperor 100 years ago. He hunted everyone affiliated with the Celestial Emperor without exception. Fuck. That fucking son of a bitch, Xian, has been wreaking havoc throughout the divine heavens and slaughtering my people non-stop for the last 100 years. How is he still alive? Explain yourself, Supreme General. The Celestial Emperor roared with an enraged face, his gaze staring daggers at the Supreme General, who was soaked in cold sweat. The Supreme General, trembling in his boots, spoke in a nervous voice, "Your Majesty, I truly don't know what is happening." Xian was nowhere near this powerful when he was still a city lord at the city of Xian. His rapid growth and newfound power are far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. No matter what we throw at him, he somehow always manages to escape. Moreover, he never stays in one place. Even if we know he'll hunt down our allies, it's near impossible to predict his actions. Even though it's been 100 years since Xian left the city of Xian to hunt down the Celestial Emperor and his allies, he has long attained a level of cultivation that typically requires geniuses hundreds, if not thousands, of years to achieve even marginal progress, so the way he's growing like he was still a spirit lord did not make any sense. Xian's progress was simply unprecedented and unfathomable in the Supreme General's eyes. Bang! The Celestial Emperor suddenly smashed his jade table into tiny pieces and shouted, "I didn't ask for excuses, Supreme General. I asked why that fucking bastard is still alive. If you cannot do your job properly, I will have you replaced immediately." The Supreme General was horrified by the Celestial Emperor's words and the looming threat of being replaced, and he quickly kowtowed on the cold floor. This useless subordinate was wrong. Please give me another chance to dispose of Xian. This will be your first and last warning. Get out of my sight. The Celestial Emperor stomped his feet, causing the entire building to tremble. The Supreme General wasted no time and swiftly left the room, his mind consumed by the urgent task of hunting down Xian. In just a mere century, Xian had inflicted more damage upon their forces than Heaven's Defiance had managed to do in the past millennium, and he was working mostly alone. I refuse to let my tens of thousands of years of hard work vanish because of a single individual. The Supreme General no longer held back and started sending his elite soldiers to hunt down Xian. Unlike the ordinary soldiers of the Celestial Army that were at most golden immortals, these elite soldiers were all real immortals between the true immortal realm and God Ascension realm. C1433 Cat and Mouse. Chapter 1433 Cat and Mouse. 1433 Cat and Mouse. With 100 elite soldiers at his command, the Supreme General wasted no time, setting off immediately on his mission to hunt down Xian. Among these elite soldiers, 80 were at the true immortal realm, 15 at the first level God Ascension realm, and the remaining 5 at the second level God Ascension realm. At that time, the strongest cultivator was only at the 5th level God Ascension realm, so one can imagine the immense prowess of this elite army compared to the ordinary soldiers, who were at most golden immortal level. As for Xian, he was only a true immortal at this time, so it was overkill to send so many powerful experts after him, but the Supreme General couldn't care less and wanted to get rid of Xian without giving him any chance of survival. However, even though the Supreme General had such a powerful army at his command, they still had to find Xian first. Due to the immense size of their world, the divine heaven, it would take hundreds if not thousands of years to travel around the world even with the help of flying treasure, hence why Xian hadn't been caught after 100 years of carnage, as he would immediately leave after killing his enemies. Moreover, Xian was only a single individual, which made it even harder to track him down. The Supreme General could only show up to witness the aftermath of Xian's carnage, then attempt to predict his next destination and hope to close their gap, but with battles between the Celestial Emperor's supporters and Heaven's Defiance occurring in hundreds of locations around the world, it was easier said than done. Whenever Xian's sixth sense alerted him of imminent danger, he would immediately halt his killing spree and hide for several years to enter secluded cultivation, further increasing his strength and making it even more difficult for the Supreme General to catch him. This tricky cat-and-mouse game between Xian and the Supreme General would last for another 300 years until Xian broke through the true immortal realm and entered first-level God Ascension. Once Xian entered the God Ascension realm, he became much bolder and started attacking the Celestial Emperor's forces even more frequently. Who are you? Why are you attacking our Gu family? Do you have any idea who you're messing with? We have the Celestial Emperor's backing. Ah! Have mercy. Please. Spare my children. Monster. You are not human, you monster. Xian ignored their screaming and slaughtered all of them without any mercy, regardless of their age or gender. Once Xian left the Gu family's household without leaving a single person alive, he lingered in the place for a moment to uproot the entire building, something he hadn't bothered doing before. Fuck. What the fuck are they doing? The Celestial Emperor blew a massive hole in his room after receiving news of the Gu family's destruction. For the past 300 years, he had endured the relentless onslaught of news reporting the annihilation of his allies by Xian, each report tearing away at the fabric of his power and influence. As for the Supreme General, he didn't dare to return to the Celestial Palace without Xian's head in his grasp, so he has been absent for 300 years, and his absence left a conspicuous void within the ranks of the Celestial Army. Meanwhile, when Heaven's Defiance learned of his absence, they immediately became more aggressive and daring, further complicating the already challenging situation for the Celestial Army. After another 200 years of no results, the Celestial Emperor called back the Supreme General. You are fucking fired, you useless piece of shit. I gave you 500 years to hunt down a single man, and what have you accomplished in 500 years? Absolutely nothing. The Celestial Emperor slapped the Supreme General so hard he fell on the ground. However, the Celestial Emperor didn't stop there and started kicking and stomping on the Supreme General while he was still down. Even though the Supreme General was an immortal, he didn't dare to retaliate against the Celestial Emperor and accepted the beating without uttering a single sound. This useless subordinate has failed your majesty, the Celestial Emperor. I don't deserve my position. The Supreme General immediately got on his knees after the Celestial Emperor stopped beating him. Scram! The Celestial Emperor shouted at him. Excuse me. The Supreme General immediately left. After leaving the Celestial Palace and going somewhere far away, the Supreme General unleashed all of his built-up anger on a random city, killing thousands of innocent mortals. Xian. This is all your fault. I, Mor, swear to hunt you down until my last breath. After destroying an innocent city, Mor resumed his hunt for Xian alone, hoping to regain the Celestial Emperor's trust and his position as the Supreme General with Xian's head. 1,000 years later, Mor finally encountered Xian. However, it wasn't because Mor had successfully hunted down Xian. In fact, it was the other way around, with Xian hunting down Mor. I have finally found you, evil god. Mor's entire being trembled from excitement after seeing Xian. Because of you, I was removed from my position as Supreme General. Because of you, the Celestial Emperor tossed me aside. You will regret ever challenging the Celestial Emperor today. Xian remained silent. Suddenly, as though a tempest of rage had been unleashed, a titanic wave of bloodlust surged forth from Xian's body, enveloping the heavens and the earth in its oppressive aura, spanning a vast expanse of 100 miles in every direction. And as if in response to his immense emotions, the very fabric of the heavens seemed to tremble, unleashing torrents of red and black lightning that crackled and danced ominously in the skies above. In a voice that seemed to chill the very air around him, Xian muttered with a tone that could freeze the blood in one's veins and even raise the dead, his eyes ablaze with a profound and unsettling glow, like smoldering embers in the darkness. I have been waiting for this day for over 1,000 years. C1434 Confronting the Supreme General. Chapter 1434 Confronting the Supreme General. 1434 Confronting the Supreme General. I have been waiting for this day for over 1,000 years. Xian could only control his anger for a few seconds after encountering Mo Ru, barely enough time to utter these words. After Xiu Mai's death, Xian spent 200 years venting his anger on the Celestial Army and the Celestial Emperor's allies. Once his anger was slightly relieved, enough for him to think clearly, he spent another 100 years trying to find the culprit who killed Xiu Mai. Unfortunately, he had slaughtered all of the soldiers Mo Ru had sent to distract him, so there was nobody left alive besides the Celestial Emperor who could identify Mo Ru as the killer. Yet, the Shadow Army, whose power and influence had been growing over the course of 3 centuries, somehow unearthed the truth, that the Supreme General, Mo Ru, bore responsibility for the death of Xiu Mai. When Dong Yi learned of this information, he immediately sought out Xian to relay this information. Of course, since Xian was always on the move and sometimes hiding in seclusion, it took some time even for the Shadow Army to find him. In fact, if the Shadow Army had been even slightly less competent, they would have suffered the same fate as Mo Ru and the Celestial Army. One could even say that without Dong Yi, who had spent hundreds of years by Xianxia's side as his right-hand man, they would have never found Xian. When Dong Yi found Xian and revealed the information about Xiu Mai's killer to him, Xian's somewhat subdued anger spewed out like a volcano during an eruption after decades of slumber. However, Xian was still too weak at that time to defeat Mo Ru, so he focused on training and improving his cultivation. He slaughtered the Celestial Emperor's allies as training and plundered their wealth, using it to further increase his own prowess. This went on for hundreds of years until Xian was confident that he could toy with Mo Ru. The first thing Xian did was seek out Dong Yi for the Shadow Army's assistance, helping him find Mo Ru. You took the words right out of my mouth, evil god. Do you have any idea how much I have suffered because of you? I was made a fool in front of those around me, and even the Celestial Emperor tossed me aside. How dare you make me suffer such humiliation? Mo Ru shouted like a crazy old man as he pointed at Xian with 2 fingers. Suffer. You call that bullshit suffering? Xian muttered in a cold voice, his gaze sharp enough to pierce even steel. He pointed his sword at Mo Gu and continued, for killing my wife, I shall teach you the true meaning of suffering. Ha ha ha. You mean that pregnant bitch? You should have heard the way she screamed when I sliced open her stomach and showed her the baby. I have never heard anything as thrilling. Mo Ru laughed like a madman. Hearing such words, Xian released a beastly roar that sounded like a dragon. His body began emitting a golden glow until it engulfed his entire body like flames. Mo Ru immediately stopped laughing, even choking on his own saliva after seeing the tremendous change in the atmosphere. Xian waved his black and red sword viciously, instantly splitting the heaven and earth before him in half. Seeing this, not even Mo Ru, who was at 3rd level God Ascension, dared to confront such a powerful attack head-on, so he quickly dodged it. Where the fuck is this bastard pulling out so much power from? Mo Ru cried inwardly when he sensed the violent and overwhelming spiritual energy contained within Xian's normal sword swing without any techniques. Xian was only at the 2nd level God Ascension, yet he displayed prowess that surpassed even the strongest cultivator in the world who was at 5th level God Ascension, the Celestial Emperor himself. Moreover, the golden aura that covered Xian's body made every single cell within Mo Ru scream in terror, almost as though they instinctively knew how dangerous it was. After unleashing his first strike, Xian immediately swung his sword again before even confirming that his first one had struck or missed Mo Ru, as if he already knew. Mo Ru hastily dodged the incoming attacks and started retaliating, throwing powerful martial techniques that could easily erase tens of thousands of miles of divine heaven if it landed. However, Xian used his black sword to effortlessly cut down any technique that was thrown in his direction. What? How is he cutting my immortal chi like it's ordinary spiritual energy? Mo Ru felt his world turning upside down after witnessing something incomprehensible. I refuse to believe you'll also cut down my celestial chi. Mo Ru shouted before exuding a divine and godly presence. When the animals, spiritual beasts, and even insects within 100,000-mile radius sensed Mo Ru's celestial chi, they all instinctively lowered their bodies and bowed toward his direction. After attaining immortality, cultivators gain mastery over immortal chi, a force that can overpower any non-immortal. However, upon reaching the God Ascension realm, they ascend to a level where they can sense and wield celestial chi, a power that eclipses even immortal chi. Humph. Xian released a disdainful snort as he countered Mo Ru's celestial chi with his own. The clash between their energies resulted in a colossal crater spanning 20,000 miles around them. Naturally, everything within the crater had been completely erased from existence. The potency of celestial chi was such that even a true immortal would perish if struck by it. However, due to the immense energy required to wield celestial chi, it could only be utilized sparingly. After just using celestial chi once, Mo Ru was already soaked in sweat and panting heavily, something that typically never happens to those who reached the God Ascension realm. Yet, Xian remained unfazed, his breathing calm and steady. Mo Ru's countenance darkened as he realized the vast disparity between their prowess, prompting him to contemplate possible avenues of escape from his dire predicament. Xian, who had been on the battlefield for most of his life, acquired the ability to tell when his enemy had given up and wanted to escape at a glance, so he could read Mo Ru like an open book at this moment. Ha 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 ha. Xian suddenly started laughing in an eerie manner, his voice sending chills down Mo Ru's entire being. We've barely just fought and you're already thinking about escaping? I understand why the Celestial Emperor sent someone like you to assassinate a helpless mother now. Turns out you're one cowardly son of a bitch. Mo Ru's face flushed red with anger after hearing Xian's insult, yet he didn't utter anything back, merely staring daggers at him. Xian suddenly stopped laughing and continued with a truly grim expression on his face. Let's see if you'll still dare to leave after seeing this. Dong Yi. He shouted. Dong Yi appeared next to Xian the very next moment, but he was not alone, as he had a woman within his grasp, her presence clearly against her will. When Mo Ru saw the face of this woman being held captive by Dong Yi, his face twisted in shock and anger, almost as if he had eaten a group of live flies by accident. Chapter 1435 Unhinged, 18+. Chapter 1435 Unhinged, 18+, 1435 Unhinged, 18+. Reader's discretion is advised. Mature content ahead. __________. You can escape if you want, but you'll have to leave behind this helpless woman. Xian spoke in a nonchalant voice as he calmly gazed at Mo Ru, who was trembling so violently one might mistake it as an ongoing seizure. Evil God, you son of a bitch. I swear to God if you hurt even a single hair on her body, I will. Mo Ru roared at the top of his lungs, causing the entire world to shudder. However, he was quickly interrupted by Xian, who reached for the silky hair on the woman's head with his hand, grabbing a handful of it before viciously ripping it directly out of her scalp, tearing away a chunk of skin on her head and causing it to gush with blood. Ah! The beautiful woman in Dong Yi's grasp screamed in pain and squirmed like a fish out of water. Dong Mei. Mo Ru cried out loud as he subconsciously flew at her, but he was quickly stopped by Dong Yi, who casually pressed his sword on the woman's throat, threatening to cut it if Mo Ru got any closer. Seeing this, Mo Ru could only halt his movements and hover in the air with a helpless look on his face, not daring to move a single muscle in fear for the woman's life. How? Why is Dong Mei in their hands? She should be protected by. Mo Ru suddenly recalled that he had been removed from the position of Supreme General, so it was only natural for the Celestial Emperor to stop all support for him and his family. A moment later, Xian moved closer to Mo Dongmei, who was shaking non-stop with tears constantly flowing down her face. Despite being a powerful golden immortal cultivator, she was akin to a mortal before Dong Yi, who was a true immortal. "Please, let me go. I will do anything you want," she pleaded. Xian lifted his hand and gently caressed her soft cheeks, causing her to shake even more violently. "Don't you dare touch her with your filthy hands, evil god." Mo Ru released an enraged shout, but he didn't move a muscle. Xian halted his movement and shifted his gaze from the terrified woman to Mo Ru. "How long have you known each other?" he suddenly asked. "Why the hell are you asking such a question?" "Ah." Mo Dongmei started screaming again when Xian suddenly swung his sword, slicing off a piece of her face that had just caressed, creating a hole in her right cheek. "Dongmei." Mo Ru clenched his fists to resist the urge to pounce on Xian, squeezing so hard it bled. "How long have you known each other?" Xian calmly repeated the same words he just uttered without the slightest change to his expression, clearly unfazed by his actions. "Oh, 180,000 years. We have known each other for 180,000 years. Mo Ru could only respond to his question, fearing what refusing might do. 180,000 years, huh? I wonder how it would feel to lose someone you've loved for so long. I suffered unfathomable pain when I lost my wife, and we haven't known each other for even a small fraction of your time together, so I cannot imagine. Would you be kind enough to share your experience with me later, Supreme General?" Xian asked as he stared into Mo Ru's eyes. Don't you dare, evil god. Please, I will do anything you want. Just spare her." Mo Ru's will to fight had completely dissipated, leaving behind only a profound sense of despair and powerlessness, emotions he had never before experienced in such intensity. Yet, Xian remained unhinged, and as if to reflect his existence, the golden aura slowly turned black and red. "You will do anything I want. Then I'd like you to bring my wife, Xiu Mei, and our child back from the dead," Xian requested. That's impossible. Not even the Celestial Emperor can bring back the dead," Mo Ru exclaimed. "Ah." In response to Mo Ru's response, Xian grabbed two of Dongmei's fingers and yanked them, tearing them right off her left hand, bones and all. "You claimed you'd do anything, but you immediately proved to be a liar." Xian sighed, shaking his head in a dejected manner. This unhinged son of a bitch. Hell definitely kill her at this rate." Mo Ru gritted his teeth. Xian suddenly narrowed his gaze and yanked 3 more fingers off Dongmei. What was that for?" Mo Ru exclaimed. "I didn't like the way you were looking at me just now," he calmly responded. What?" Mo Ru was speechless. However, despite her seemingly fatal injuries, Mo Dongmei was far from death's grasp, thanks to her high cultivation, which continuously regenerated her body. Xian stopped paying attention to Mo Ru and turned to look at Mo Dongmei, who immediately looked down when she sensed his gaze on her. "Hey, woman, look at me." Xian called out to her, but she continued staring at the ground. Seeing this, Xian grabbed her by the chin and forced her to stare at his face. Then, with his other hand, he gouged her eyes right out of their sockets. "Ah! My eyes!" Mo Dongmei shrieked like a ghost. Xian ignored the screaming right beside his ear and looked at the 2 eyeballs in his bloodied grasp, muttering, "If you're not going to use them, I might as well take them from you. Evil god. What do you want from us?" Mo Ru could no longer endure it and roared. "If you're going to torture someone, torture me instead. I was the one who killed your wife. Not Dongmei. She has nothing to do with this." Xian shifted his gaze back to Mo Ru and surprisingly chuckled, "Nothing to do with this? My wife, Xiu Mei, also had nothing to do with my fight with the Celestial Emperor, yet you targeted her just because she was my wife. With a swift movement, Xian clenched his grasp and destroyed the eyeballs, creating a weird sound. As for torturing you, don't worry, you'll definitely get your turn later. After saying such words, he returned to looking at Mo Dongmei, who was still screaming hysterically, almost as if she'd gone insane. Chapter 1436 An Eye for an Eye, 18+. Chapter 1436 An Eye for an Eye, 18+, 1436 An Eye for an Eye, 18+, reader's discretion is advised. Mature content ahead. Your husband killed my wife, so I will kill you in return. An eye for an eye. Do you blame me? Xian suddenly asked Mo Dongmei, who lost control over her body, causing it to release its impurities in the form of piss and poop. Ugh, how dirty. You nearly dirted my clothes, too. Dongyi shook his head in an awfully calm manner despite what they were doing to this helpless woman. Evil God. Stop. I will help you fight the Celestial Emperor if you spare her. You can even kill me afterward if you want. Mo Ru suddenly shouted. The Celestial Emperor? As if I need your help to get rid of him. Xian sneered. Then what the fuck do you want from me? Mo Ru cried out loud. I thought I'd already made it crystal clear at the very beginning that I am going to let you experience true suffering. Xian muttered in a grim voice. He then moved his arm, using his sword to perfectly skin Mo Dongmei like one would skin an animal's hide. Seeing this, Mo Ru could no longer endure it and pounced forth. If they were going to kill Mo Dongmei regardless if he attacked them or not, he might as well take his chances. However, all it took for Xian to stop Mo Ru was a single blast of celestial qi. When he was struck by the celestial qi, Mo Ru was sent hurtling into the crater, landing at the very bottom. Now, let us continue. Xian immediately returned to torturing Mo Dongmei. As Mo Ru lay at the bottom of the crater with a broken body, unable to lift even a finger, his cultivation allowed him to witness every moment of Xian torturing his wife as if he were right in front of them. After skinning Mo Dongmei like an animal, Xian proceeded to butcher her like a cow, removing chunk after chunk of her flesh until only her skeleton remained. However, surprisingly, Mo Dongmei remained alive despite missing most of her body and even her heart. Once a cultivator achieves golden immortal, they gain the ability to survive even if their entire body and heart are crushed as long as their soul remains unharmed. Mo Dongmei could have separated her soul from her body and escaped that way, but Dongyi had sealed her soul within her body, making it impossible for her to escape. Sometime later, Xian crushed Mo Dongmei's skeleton until it was fine powder and mixed it with her butchered flesh before forcefully feeding it to Mo Ru, who had been silently recovering his body as he watched everything. As for Mo Dongmei's soul, Xian shattered it with his celestial qi right before Mo Ru, killing her without giving her a chance at reincarnation. Why, you monster? You are not human. You are the incarnation of evil itself. Mo Ru bawled his eyes out as he was forced to savor the flavor of his beloved wife, literally. Perhaps that may be true, but it was you who brought out the evil within me. Xian said in a low voice. Sometime later, Go-Ru shouted, Well? What are you waiting for? Are you going to kill me now or what? Xian didn't respond and silently stared at him while surrounded by an ominous aura. After a moment of silence, he spoke in a chilling voice. Do you seriously think it would be over so quickly? What do you mean? Mo Ru muttered in a dazed voice. What Xian said the following moment left Mo Ru absolutely speechless and horrified. In case you forgot, it wasn't just my wife who died at your hands. My child, our daughter, was also slaughtered by you. Xian reminded him of his crimes. Why, you don't mean? Mo Ru didn't even dare to completely decipher the meaning behind Xian's ominous words, leaving his mind blank. Dongyi. Xian called for him. Yes, my liege. Dongyi bowed to him before disappearing for a moment. After a few seconds of eerie silence, Dong Yi returned to Tian Xian's side with another individual within his grasp. This figure was much smaller than Mo Dongmei, and he was also much weaker, being only a divine warrior. Father. Is that you? Please. Help me. These bastards captured mother and everybody in our family. The young man immediately started shouting when he saw his father's face, even feeling relieved. And no, 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 no. Mo Ru had a look on his face so twisted and horrifying that it could scare even ghosts to death. Please. Evil, Tian Xian. Anything but this. Anything but my children. Mo Ru pleaded in a desperate voice. However, Tian Xian ignored Mo Ru and used his sword to cripple the young man's cultivation. He then turned to look at Dong Yi and spoke, "Bring the rest here." "As you command, my liege." Dong Yi left for a few moments again before returning with another individual. He repeated this until over a dozen individuals knelt before Tian Xian, their cultivations crippled. "Why? I only killed one of your children." Mo Ru asked with blood flowing down his eyes, nostrils, and lips. "You didn't just kill one of my children. You killed my one and only child and my wife, so you killed all of my children, including the ones we would have had in the future." As Tian Xian spoke, he removed the limbs of his first victim, replicating the injuries Xiu Mei had suffered. He repeated the same actions on the second victim, then the third, until he reached his seventh victim, who was a young woman with a somewhat round stomach. "This must be fate. You'll get to see your grandchild before they are even born." Without hesitation, Tian Xian split the woman's stomach in half, revealing the baby inside to Mo Ru, who could only lay there and stare at the gruesome scene with a blank expression on his face. Then, without stopping, Tian Xian continued to torture the rest of Mo Ru's children. Chilling screams that could freeze even hell itself filled the crater for many minutes until it suddenly became dead silent. After a long moment of silence, a blood-curdling and inhuman scream that sounded worse than a pig being slaughtered echoed throughout the crater. Tian Ziyan. Chapter 1437 Evil Gods Atrocities. Chapter 1437 Evil Gods Atrocities. 1437 Evil Gods Atrocities. After Tian Xian finished slaughtering Mo Ru's entire family before his very eyes, Tian Xian took a seat on top of the pile of corpses and calmly gazed at Mo Ru, who had an inhuman expression on his face. "To the heavens, they will not forgive you for your heinous crimes today." Mo Ru cried as he stared back at Tian Xian. If glares could kill people, Mo Ru's stares had the potential to slay even gods. "Perhaps, but I do not seek forgiveness for my actions today, I only ask for understanding." Tian Xian muttered as he lifted his gaze to stare at the red sky that seemed to be growing darker with every moment. He then looked at his bloodied hands and sighed, "Even after all this, my anger is not fully satiated. Maybe it will never be satisfied, not even after I slay the Celestial Emperor." He returned to looking at Mo Ru and continued, "All you had to do was leave my wife alone, but alas, even if I had refused to do the Celestial Emperor's deed, he would have simply found somebody else to kill her. You should have never offended the Celestial Emperor. This is all your fault." Mo Ru roared. "Indeed, I am partially at fault for Xiu Mei's death, but not because I offended the Celestial Emperor." Tian Xian sighed with a self-loathing expression. "I promised to protect her with my life, but I was too weak to even do that, so she perished. I have no excuses." He suddenly stood up and pointed his sword at Mo Ru and continued, "I don't care how long it'll take. I will find her again after her reincarnation. Even if she doesn't remember me, I will protect her properly this time." Reincarnation. Ha! You've truly gone insane. Mo Ru sneered. Tian Xian narrowed his eyes and muttered, "Don't worry, you won't even get the chance to experience reincarnation." His sword suddenly gushed with immense enhanced sword aura, decapitating Mo Ru. However, since Mo Ru was essentially a god, he would survive even if his entire body was crushed. Xian naturally knew of this, so he immediately captured Mo Rust's soul and sealed it within the black sword in his grasp. Upon reaching God Ascension, a cultivator's soul undergoes a profound change, making it challenging for even another God Ascension cultivator to destroy it. I don't have the strength to shatter your soul right now, so I will keep you in here until I do. Xian tossed the black sword into his storage ring and silently stood there. Meanwhile, the sky above Xian had become so dark it looked as though it had been burned black. My liege. Dong Yi appeared beside him with a worried face. Go. Xian responded with a single word. Yes. Dong Yi immediately disappeared from the scene. Once he was alone, Xian glanced at the cruelty he had done and suddenly fell to his knees. Ugh! He proceeded to vomit violently, even crying rivers of tears as he emptied his stomach. His sweat-soaked body trembled non-stop, sending chills throughout his entire being. Ah! He released a beastly cry a few moments later. Xian, who had spent decades in resolve and had not felt anything during the process, was suddenly overwhelmed by an immense wave of guilt and disgust over what he had done to Mo Rust's family. She definitely wouldn't have approved of my methods, even hate me for what I've done. He muttered in a low voice. Unfortunately, this is the only way for me to remain somewhat sane, the only reason for me to remain in his shitty world without you. Xian stood up a moment later and lifted his head to stare at the massive black clouds rumbling above him. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and get this over with. In response to Xian's words, the black clouds suddenly unleashed unfathomably powerful lightning strikes upon him. Hundreds of thick lightning strikes, each powerful enough to cause the world to tremble, smitten Xian's small figure, as if the heavens wanted to erase his existence. Yet, these lightning strikes were unable to penetrate Xian's body, shielded by a black aura, let alone harm him. The heavenly tribulation lasted for several days without any pauses. Once the black clouds dissipated from the sky, Xian emerged from the burned crater without a single injury on his body. However, he was no longer alone, as tens of thousands of powerful immortals surrounded him in every direction. Evil God! You will pay for the atrocities you have committed today. Xian swept the crowd with a cold yet calm gaze. After identifying them as the Celestial Army, the suppressed bloodlust within Xian began oozing out once again. Even if I have to fight against the entire world, even if I have to split heaven and earth in half, I will destroy anything and anyone that dares to block my path to the Celestial Emperor. Xian continued his relentless campaign to slaughter the Celestial Emperor, leaving a trail of bloodshed and death across the divine heaven, with mountains of corpses marking his path. Brother Yuan. Are you okay? Xiao Hua's worried voice suddenly resounded. Yuan slowly opened his eyes and found himself kneeling on the ground with tears flowing down both sides of his face. Huh. What happened to me? He muttered in a dazed voice, unaware that Xian's memories had overwhelmed his consciousness. When he regained his clarity, Yuan recalled Xian's memories and the atrocities had committed again, causing him to vomit violently. Brother Yuan. Xiao Hua called out to him again. He hurriedly raised his hand and said, I am fine. I just remembered something unpleasant, that's all. Once head calmed down, Yuan stood up and left the basement, returning to the house. Before he left, Yuan took the time to clean the entire building, removing all dust and dirt, fixing the broken door, and even cleansing the bloodstains in Xiao Mai's room. Chapter 1438 Unique Quest. Chapter 1438 Unique Quest 1438 Unique Quest. After cleaning up the building to the best of his abilities, Yuan left the place and returned to the dark and ominous world outside. He turned to look at Invincible Heaven for a moment and said, the city of Xian has been split into many pieces, but we can use it to determine our location within the Shadow Realm. The Invincible Heaven was built in the city center, but it was pushed further east when we expanded the city, so we're near the eastern side of the Shadow Realm. Yuan closed his eyes and recalled the first city he encountered when he entered the Shadow Realm before. That part of the city was toward the western gate, so we'll have to travel west if we want to have a higher chance of encountering those two God Ascension realm souls. Now that he had a sense of direction, Yuan no longer hesitated and started flying toward the west. As he reached the end of the city and neared the banished souls, Yuan heard a familiar noise and shifted his gaze to look at the notification. Yuan suddenly felt his body getting lighter, as if an invisible boulder had been lifted from his shoulders. Celestial shackles. What is that? Yuan raised an eyebrow at this notification, as had never seen anything like this before. However, it implied that he had been restricted by something, which had been unsealed when he fully regained the evil god's memories. With that said, while he's fully regained Tian Xian's memories, he has yet to fully regain Tian Yang's memories, even though Tian Xian already did. As Yuan pondered about the implications of this unsealing, more notifications appeared. Quest. Difficulty, impossible. Quest description. Complete the following trials to acquire the approval of Heaven's supremacy. 1. Defeat a cultivator who is at least 9 realms above you without using Heaven's supremacy. 2. Defeat a magical beast that is at least 9 realms above you without using Heaven's supremacy. 3. Break your mortal shackles and become a true immortal. 4. Defeat 100 million enemies. 5. Attain an unbreakable will. Yuan's eyes widened with shock upon seeing the requirements for the trials. Even a top cultivation genius seen only once every 1,000 years would have trouble defeating an opponent who is an entire realm stronger, yet he had to defeat someone 9 entire realms stronger than himself. The second trial that required him to defeat a magical beast 9 realms above his own was even more difficult, as magical beasts are naturally stronger than human cultivators. As for the third and most time-consuming trial, he had to evolve his physique before he could even break through Spirit King, and even if his cultivation resumed its progress, it could take decades for him to reach true immortal. The fourth trial simply required him to defeat opponents, but the number needed was massive, to say the least. The fifth and last trial was too vague to gauge its difficulty. Heavens! Do I have to fulfill all of these ridiculous requirements before I can use Heaven's supremacy? He cried inwardly. While Heaven's supremacy was undeniably an incredibly powerful, even unrivaled, technique, the prerequisites to employ it were simply staggering. How did I even manage to use Heaven's supremacy before I fulfilled these requirements, anyway? Did it deliberately give me a brief taste of its peerless prowess just to mess with me like this? He sighed. However, while these trials may seem outrageous at first glance, perhaps even impossible in the eyes of most if not everyone besides Yuan, he did not immediately give up and only found it difficult even with his advantages. Omicron M. After regaining the evil god's memories, Yuan's soul and demeanor underwent a profound transformation. Yet, even with his vast and unfathomable experience, Yuan desperately clenched onto his own personality and character. Naturally, since he had only lived for barely 2 decades in comparison to Tian Xian, who had tens of thousands of years of experience, not to mention Tian Yang and the other incarnations, Yuan's own experience was insignificant, akin to that of a single grain of sand in a vast desert. This made it incredibly difficult if not outright impossible for Yuan to remain unchanged, but he still managed to hold on to his core values and identity. As Yuan stood at the edge of the city, he silently gazed toward the direction of his destination with an ominous feeling in his guts. If I flew toward the western region directly, I would have to pass the central region, where some of the most dangerous and powerful banished souls exist. The Shadow Realm existed even before the evil god's birth, and Tian Xian himself had traversed the world several times during his life. However, while there were not as many banished souls as in the current era, most of the expert souls resided near the center of the Shadow Realm, as it contained more spiritual energy, allowing them to preserve their souls and sanity a little better. Moreover, since there was only so much space in the central region, the weaker souls were forced to live elsewhere, where their souls deteriorated much quicker. In my current state, I'd be simply marching toward my grave if I approached the central region, so I need to circle around it. Since he was closer to the northern region than the southern region, Yuan eventually approached the northern region of the Shadow Realm. When Yuan entered the banished soul's territory, despite not exuding his soul strength, none of the souls there approached him, almost as though they were afraid of him. Yuan observed this change and wondered if it had anything to do with his strengthened soul, which was naturally exuding the aura of an ancient expert that could only be detected by the banished souls. However, he didn't complain and soared toward the next city with extreme speed. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1439 A Familiar Notification. Chapter 1439 A Familiar Notification. 1439 A familiar notification. Somewhere in the primordial realm, a dignified middle-aged man of imposing presence sat poised upon the surface of a large pond while emanating an ancient aura, seemingly asleep. Suddenly, a ripple appeared on the tranquil surface of the pond, followed by a calm yet excited voice. "Father, the blood jade has finally activated." The middle-aged man's eyes, which had remained closed for countless years, abruptly snapped open, revealing his beautiful yet ominous red eyes. He stood up without creating another ripple on the pond and turned to look at the tall figure standing at the edge of the pond. "Prepare for his arrival," he spoke in a nonchalant tone. The tall figure, a beautiful woman with long black hair and similar crimson eyes, nodded before disappearing into thin air. Once he was alone again, the middle-aged man lifted his head to gaze at the dark sky and smiled. "At last, you have returned to us." A few more moments later, the middle-aged man also disappeared into thin air. Sometime later, several tens of thousands of miles away, a man wore a fearful expression on his face after he realized the middle-aged man had left the pond. "The Azura clan is on the move again." "What? The Azura clan? They've been silent for so many years now, though. Warn everybody. If we disturb them even slightly, there'll be another bloodbath within the primordial realm." Rumors of the Azura clan's sudden activity spread swiftly across the primordial realm, igniting speculation and intrigue like wildfire. Moreover, even though it was only a rumor, nobody questioned its legitimacy or dared to confirm it. The Azura clan? Fuck, why does it have to happen when the next election is about to begin? What if they're planning on participating this year? Ha ha ha. Even if they want to participate, I doubt the heavens would allow them to. Whatever, it doesn't matter what they're trying to do. I'm going into seclusion until the selection begins. Regardless of their status or cultivation, most exiles within the primordial realm entered seclusion shortly after the rumor spread, turning the usually rowdy and chaotic place eerily quiet and peaceful. Meanwhile, in the shadow realm, Yuan silently pondered about Xian's memories, mostly his connection with the Azura clan, where Xiaohua claimed to originate from. His first encounter with the Azura clan was anything but friendly. In fact, they faced each other as adversaries since the Azura clan aligned with the Celestial Emperor's forces. Yet, this didn't imply an alliance, as many were coerced into supporting the Celestial Emperor under threat of resource restriction if not straight annihilation. The Azura clan was a powerful but small family that has existed since Tian Yang's time but didn't start gaining influence until much later. Their family consisted of less than 100 members. Despite that, they were known as one of the most powerful backgrounds in the divine heaven, surpassing even the 9 immortal clans. Just like Xian, the Celestial Emperor coveted their talents and approached them. Unfortunately for the Azura clan, they were approached way before the heavenly war of immortals and gods even began, so they had to bear the full pressure of the Celestial Emperor's prowess. As powerful as the Azura clan may be, they could not defy the Celestial Emperor and his massive forces, so they ended up surrendering before joining his forces. While their encounter with the Celestial Emperor was unfortunate, the same could not be said about their encounter with Tian. Since they encountered Tian long after had dealt with Mo Ru and regained his composure, they were not immediately annihilated without any chance of survival. Tian, after gaining enough strength and shattering Mo Ru's soul, started working together with Heaven's Defiance and recruited those who were forced to submit to the Celestial Emperor into their own forces. The Azura clan was one of these people had released from the Celestial Emperor's shackles. Upon regaining their freedom, the Azura clan swore their loyalty to Tian and started their own campaign against the Celestial Emperor, slaughtering everyone who willingly worked with him. The pent-up bloodlust of the Azura clan amassed over thousands of years erupted like a volcanic explosion, shocking the entire divine heaven and leaving everyone terrified of their presence, their allies included. Xiaohua. What's the Azura clan planning? Why did they seal that little princess within Xiaohua? Yuan pondered inwardly. Since most of Tian Xian's memories were related to fighting and hunting down the Celestial Emperor's forces, there wasn't much information on other matters. However, Yuan instinctively knew that he had to meet the Azura clan soon. I could either patiently collect the ancient seals and secretly enter the primordial realm or forcefully open it. Regardless of my decision, it will cause a commotion within the 9 heavens and alert the current Celestial Emperor of my presence. Due to Tian Xian's memories, Yuan no longer had to rely on the ancient seals to enter the primordial realm. However, such methods would essentially announce his presence to the entire world. In the end, Yuan stopped worrying about something that might not happen for a while and focused on his current problem, Earth's calamity. After traveling for almost 2 weeks straight, Yuan finally arrived at his destination, returning to the city he had explored during his first visit to the Shadow Realm. The first thing he did when he entered the city was approach the giant dragon statue. Omicron M. As Yuan hovered before the dragon statue, he activated Dragon's Gaze to see if he could activate the statue again. However, there was no response. Sometime later, he scanned the city with Dragon's Gaze, and sure enough, he could still see some buildings glowing, indicating that there was a Great One's trial there. After pondering for a moment, he flew toward the building that had the brightest glow and entered it. Inside the building was a small dragon statue. Shortly after he entered the building, a familiar notification appeared before Yuan. Chapter 1440 The Great One's Proposal. Chapter 1440 The Great One's Proposal. 1440 The Great One's Proposal. Yuan suddenly found himself standing in the middle of a long bridge while surrounded by golden clouds, and a familiar-looking entity with red skin and a bloodthirsty aura stood on the other side of the bridge. A demon, huh? In the presence of a demon, most would quiver with fear, but Yuan calmly gazed at it like it was akin to an ant in his eyes. This demon had the cultivation of spirit enlightenment, but in terms of prowess, it would rival even a divine warrior. Yuan shifted his head and gazed to look behind him at the red line drawn on the bridge. 059, 058, 057, a whole minute to prepare? How generous. Yuan mumbled as he took a seat right behind the red line. Once the timer reached 0, the demon started walking toward the red line in small and slow steps. Yet, Yuan didn't do anything and calmly watched as the demon slowly approached him. Seeing this, the demon bore a perplexed expression, baffled by Yuan's lack of resistance or opposition, almost as though he had no intention of stopping it. It took almost 90 seconds, but the demon finally stood before the red line. As the demon raised its leg to take the final step, Yuan calmly muttered, "Swords of eternal torment." The demon suddenly found itself unable to control even a single muscle within its body, much less finish the final step, almost as though its figure was completely frozen in time. 1:31, 10:31, 1 hour 59 minutes and 31 seconds, 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye, yet the demon remained frozen with its leg halfway in the air. 4 hours, 10 hours, 50 hours, once the timer reached 72 hours, the demon suddenly shattered into countless fragments like glass, followed by a notification. Yuan already knew that he wouldn't receive any reward for completing the Great One's trial, but he still wanted to see if there would be any difference. It was a lot easier than I'd anticipated. Yuan muttered to himself as he left the scene. However, as he reached the exit, he sensed a profound gaze staring at him. He immediately turned around. "You are." Yuan was slightly surprised by the sudden appearance of an eye that hovered at the corner of the room. "Oh. You can see me?" The eye spoke in a slightly surprised tone. "You must be the Great One." Yuan quickly identified the identity of this golden eye. The Great One narrowed his eyes slightly and remained silent for a few moments. "It hasn't been that long since our last encounter, yet your progress has been monstrous, for lack of a better term," the Great One remarked. The Great One had already recognized Yuan's potential from their first meeting, but he never could have imagined that he had underestimated Yuan's talent to such an extent. Ha ha ha. The Great One suddenly started laughing. Yuan, correct? Why did you challenge the trial even though you wouldn't receive anything? I just felt like it. Yuan casually shrugged. Interesting, then allow me to ask you another question. Why have you returned to the Shadow Realm? If you're seeking treasure, I'm afraid you won't find anything besides the ones within the treasure room. I'm not here for treasures. Yuan shook his head and did not further explain his situation. The Great One stared directly into Yuan's eyes, almost as though he wanted to read Yuan's memories like the last time. However, he quickly realized that he was unable to see anything and swiftly gave up. I have never met anyone half as talented as you. The Great One sighed. Thank you. After a moment of silence, the Great One spoke in a serious voice. It's been countless years since I last met someone with even half your potential. It would be a waste to ignore such talents, so I have a proposal. How about becoming my disciple? Excuse me? You want to accept me as your disciple? Yuan didn't dare to believe his ears. Indeed. If you become my disciple, I will help you reach the God Ascension realm within 1,000 years. Yuan raised his eyebrows and asked, what about your legacy? What about it? Would it still count if I met you in such a manner? Ha ha ha. The Great One started laughing again. The treasures I'll give to my own disciple will naturally be much better than the legacy's reward, something I created out of boredom. To tell you the truth, the legacy's rewards are mostly just random trash I've picked up throughout the years. Of course, even trash that I pick up is better than what the top families in the 9 heaven could provide. Yuan was left speechless by this revelation. The notion that the creation of the Great One's legacy stemmed from mere boredom caught him entirely off guard. You look disappointed. Is it due to the rewards or something else? The Great One inquired. A little bit of both, I guess. As ID said, even though the treasures for the legacy are worthless to me, they are still extremely valuable to others, especially humans. I can randomly pick a treasure from the pile and it would be valuable enough to start a war. Of course, you wouldn't have to worry about that if you became my disciple, as you'll have access to the most powerful techniques and valuable treasures in the 9 heavens. This is a once-in-lifetime offer. Even immortals and gods would not hesitate to become my servant, much less a disciple. The Great One became silent and patiently awaited Yuan's response. Chapter 1441 A little early. Chapter 1441 A little early 1441 A little early Yuan stared at the Great One's overbearing eyes and spoke after a moment of silence. You're actually serious about recruiting me as your disciple? Of course. I wouldn't joke about something like this. What makes you think I am joking? The Great One asked. I thought most beings of your stature typically avoided such things, especially since you're a divine beast. Since divine beasts and humans have different cultivation methods, it wouldn't make sense for a divine beast to teach a human in cultivation. Another reason would be their lack of human cultivation techniques and resources. However, the Great One was an entity that stood at the very top of the cultivation world with unimaginable wealth and resources, so such problems weren't an issue for him. If it were a few million years ago, I would have simply laughed at such an idea, but times have changed. Divine beasts and humans are no longer isolated in their own world, and the world itself is evolving in ways even I cannot fathom. In fact, you won't be my first disciple, or even second, but the third. Yuan smiled and said, it's a very enticing proposal, especially since it's coming from an entity such as the Great One. Unfortunately, I will have to decline. The Great One narrowed his eyes, his gaze seemingly filled with disappointment. Why? He asked. This marked his first experience of being rejected in such a matter. He wasn't exaggerating when he claimed that even immortals and gods would be willing to become his disciples due to his unfathomable wealth and unshakable position within the 9 heavens. Honestly, there's no particular reason besides the fact that I don't like taking the easy route. While I may be able to progress much faster if I were to become your disciple, it doesn't necessarily mean I'll become stronger than if I were to take my own path. You think that by becoming my disciple, you'll be taking the easy route. I didn't anticipate being underestimated in such a manner, and by a human, at that. I am not underestimating you, but I'll definitely have an easier life if I ignore everything else in my life to become your disciple, as there are some things that could only be experienced and gained in the wild cultivation world. Of course, Yuan had other reasons for not becoming the Great One's disciple, but he didn't need to reveal such information. The Great One fell silent, his thoughts unknown. Sometime later, he spoke, "Since you have already refused, I have no reason to persist, nor would I go out of my way to beg someone to become my disciple. Good luck finding me in this vast universe." The Great One disappeared the following moment without uttering another word. Yuan didn't think too much of it and left the building. After preparing himself, Yuan left the city and made his way toward the direction of the treasure room. Sometime later, he halted his movements when he arrived at his destination. After looking around and taking a deep breath, he shouted in a loud voice that was amplified by his spiritual energy, "Immortal Fairy Yu Ning and Sect Master Ran, are you here? I, Yuan, have returned to fulfill my promise." Yuan's voice echoed for hundreds of miles in every direction. A few minutes passed without any responses, but he didn't panic and closed his eyes to wait while thousands of banished souls that had been alerted by his voice circled him like a school of fish without daring to get too close. A few more moments later, Yuan's eyes snapped open as he sensed a powerful presence approaching his location. Scram! A cold voice boomed, causing the banished souls around Yuan to scatter like startled pigeons. Yuan turned to look at the feminine shadowy figure before him and smiled, but before he could say anything, he sensed another powerful presence approaching them. Yuan waited for the second presence to arrive before speaking. "It's been a while. I hadn't anticipated you would return so soon," said Yu Ning, the immortal fairy, her voice filled with surprise. Ran then spoke, "While I am glad to see you again so soon, it appears to be a little too early for your return, Yuan. You're only a peak spirit king. I recall telling you to come back only after you've reached the cultivation of Spirit Emperor. You were too hasty to return." Yu Ning recalled with a slightly dispirited tone after realizing that he was only a spirit king. Yuan nodded, "I am well aware that I was only supposed to return after reaching Spirit Emperor, but rest assured, I have more than enough soul strength to get the both of you out of this gloomy place." "Really?" The two immortals exchanged glances with each other, seemingly in disbelief. "I wouldn't joke about something like this." "I promise," he reassured them. "Now then, how does one go about housing souls in a soul weapon?" Ran then said, "First, we'll need a soul weapon that isn't already occupied by another soul or spirit. Then one of us will attempt to enter it. The soul weapon's master will be able to sense any intruders and reject them, but it'll be fine if you don't do anything and allow us to dwell within the soul weapon." "Will there be any side effects for my soul weapons?" Yuan asked. "No, there won't be any since we're only using it as a temporary home until we can recreate our physical bodies." Yuan nodded and retrieved the Starry Abyss, his first soul weapon, and asked, "Who wants to be first?" "Me." They both responded simultaneously. Ran, "I've been in the Shadow Realm for much longer than you, so it should only be natural for me to leave first. Also, ladies first," Yu Ning said to him the very next moment. "That's bullshit." Ran immediately sneered. Seeing this, Yuan shook his head and said, "Relax, you too. Did you forget that I have two soul weapons?" Chapter 1442 Ran. Chapter 1442 Ran. 1442 Ran, "We know that you have two soul weapons, but to be completely honest with you, we're not confident that you have enough soul strength to house both of our souls at your current level, so you cannot blame us for wanting to go first." Ran said in a sighing voice. "He's right, Yuan. You also can't blame us for being skeptical of your capabilities." Yu Ning agreed with Ran, and she continued, "If you don't have enough soul strength, it would be incredibly dangerous for us to occupy your soul weapon, so it's not as if we have no risk. Normally, we wouldn't trust a spirit king to be capable enough to help even a single one of us, much less both of us at once, but we're just that desperate to get out of this hellhole." Yuan nodded, I understand your hesitation, so allow me to get rid of them for you. How will you do that? You'll see in just a second. It will hurt you a little, so prepare yourself. After taking a deep breath, Yuan exerted some of his soul strength, manifesting it in the form of a rippling energy that swept through their surroundings. When Yu Ning and Ran saw this ripple, they immediately felt a sense of danger and dread coming from it. Without hesitation, they sacrificed some of their precious soul strength to shield themselves from the ripple. However, even with protection, the ripple tore right through their defenses and inflicted a brief but intense pain upon their soul. The pain lasted for a split second, but it was enough to embed a deep sense of fear within Yu Ning and Ran. Yu Ning and Ran subconsciously distanced themselves away from Yuan. Although he lacked the strength to destroy their souls, he possessed the power to torture their souls with immense pain, something even more terrifying than death to these immortal cultivators. That was only about 30% of my soul strength, Yuan spoke a moment later. What do you think? Do you still doubt my capabilities to help the both of you? Such powerful soul strength was only 30%? Impossible. Not even a spirit enlightenment cultivator would possess half of such prowess. Ran exclaimed, clearly in disbelief. Yuan smiled and replied, if you don't believe me, I can do that again but with 50% of my soul strength this time. Yu Ning and Ran trembled in fear when they imagined themselves experiencing pain even worse than what they just experienced a moment ago. There's no need to go that far. I believe you. Yu Ning quickly said. And me too. I apologize for doubting your capabilities. Ran followed. After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke, I should have asked you this sooner, but what is your cultivation at? I was at 4th level God Ascension before my body was destroyed, but alas, after spending countless years in here, my cultivation dropped to Golden Immortal. Yu Ning sighed. I was also at 4th level God Ascension, but I've managed to keep my cultivation at 1st level God Ascension because of my unique cultivation technique, but that won't last for much longer. It'll probably drop to true immortal in a few thousand years. Ran shook his head in a dejected manner. Yuan's heart dropped a little when he learned of Yu Ning's cultivation since it was below God Ascension, but he quickly regained hope after hearing Ran's words. How long does it typically take for one to recreate their body? Yuan then asked. It's not really a matter of time, but an issue of resources. Yu Ning said. In order for us to recreate our body, we need the proper materials. If you have the materials on you right now, we can reconstruct our body immediately. Unfortunately, these materials are quite valuable and rare. Yuan nodded, I understand. We can worry about finding these materials later. Before we begin, I have something I'd like to say, a request. He turned to look at Ran and continued, you said that you'd give me anything I want if I took you out of this place, correct? Ran swiftly nodded, indeed. As long as it's within my power, I will help you acquire it. I only need one thing from you, your assistance. Can you explain? Of course. But before I do that, I have another question for you too. You guys have been trapped here before the heavenly war of immortals and gods even concluded, correct? That's right. Does that mean you aren't aware of the conclusion? No, we are aware. Some of the survivors had come here in the past after the war and told us everything, about how a hero known as the evil god showed up near the end and turned the tide against the celestial emperor, even slaying him in the end. Ran said. He was widely recognized as the evil god, but he was also known as the God of War. If it hadn't been for his efforts, this place would have been even more crowded. Yu Ning chuckled. We're also aware that the place we once knew as Divine Heaven is now known as the Nine Heavens, she added. That's great. Then they'll start from the middle. Yuan proceeded to tell them about his homeland Earth and how they'd been split from the Nine Heavens after the incident that separated the world into 9 realms. He then explained the current Celestial Emperor's actions and Earth's calamity. I don't know why the Celestial Emperor brought us back to the 9 Heavens through Cultivation Online, but I will find out. However, before I can even do that, I must find a way to save my own world. Yuan continued to tell Ji Ran his plan, which required the soul of a God Ascension realm cultivator. I think I get the gist of it. You just need me to supply this divine beast my spiritual energy so that it can restore the formation, preventing your world from destruction, correct? Ji Ran asked. Yes, that's right. Yuan nodded. As long as it doesn't require me to exhaust my soul strength, I will give you as much spiritual energy as you need. Ji Ran quickly agreed to help. Then you can enter this soul weapon first since I probably won't be able to use it while you are helping. Yuan extended the starry abyss, offering it to Ji Ran, who immediately flew toward it without hesitation. Chapter 1443 Yu Ning. Chapter 1443 Yu Ning 1443 Yu Ning. The moment Ji Ran entered the starry abyss, Yuan received a notification. Yuan suddenly felt the urge to retaliate and terminate Ji Ran's soul, but he quickly resisted such an urge and allowed Ji Ran to occupy the starry abyss. Once Ji Ran had successfully occupied the starry abyss, Yuan felt a chunk of his soul strength being consumed, absorbed by the starry abyss, but it wasn't enough to worry him. That took about 15% of my soul strength, huh? I anticipated worse. Yuan thought to himself. How do you feel? Ji Ran's voice resounded a moment later. I am fine. What about you? I haven't felt this good since I lost my physical body. It's also much more spacious in here than I'd anticipated, almost like I have my own little world. Ji Ran responded enthusiastically, clearly pleased with his new temporary home. When Yu Ning heard how content Ji Ran sounded, she immediately became fidgety, almost as though she couldn't wait to relocate. Sorry, but I probably won't be able to help with the formation at my current cultivation. However, I can still try. I can also do other things. Anything at all. Yu Ning said, sounding a little worried and desperate. Yuan looked at her and smiled. Don't worry, I promise to get the both of you out of here, and I will fulfill my promise even if neither of you can help me. Of course, he would have had to delay their plans until he found someone who could save his world. Thank you. I will definitely repay this debt once I reconstruct my physical body. Yu Ning exclaimed. If she had a physical body, there would have been tears flowing down her face right now. Yuan retrieved his Empyrean overlord a moment later and extended it toward Yu Ning. Seeing this, Yu Ning immediately began flying toward the sword. However, right before she reached it, an unfathomable presence appeared, followed by a strong pressure that restricted both Yu Ning and Yuan's movements. What the hell is this? Yu Ning had to use all of her strength just to utter these few words. Yuan gritted his teeth and shifted his gaze to look at the shadowy figure approaching them from a distance. This shadowy figure arrived before them in less than a second, hovering between Yuan and Yu Ning. Who are you? Yuan asked this newcomer who had the figure of an adult human but without any facial features or distinct parts that would identify their identity. Oh. You can still speak while under my pressure? I knew you were no ordinary spirit king, but to think you were this exceptional. The shadowy figure spoke in a voice that resembled an old man. Why you? You're the Holy Sword Saint, Jean Gemming. What do you want from us? Yu Ning recognized the shadowy figure's identity from his voice alone. I don't need anything from you since I am here for this young man. Jean Gemming responded. He continued while staring at Yuan. I sensed your powerful soul strength and was intrigued, so I came here and observed you guys a little. So you were eavesdropping on us? How distasteful for someone of your stature, Holy Sword Saint. Ji Ran sneered from within the starry abyss. I stopped being the Holy Sword Saint when I was tossed into this place countless years ago. Jean Gemming retorted coldly. He then stared into Yuan's eyes and continued, you're looking for people to save your world, correct? Take me instead of this useless woman. I was at the 5th level God Ascension during my peak, and am still at the 3rd level God Ascension right now. If that's not enough, I will give you all of the Holy Sword Academy's sword techniques. I will be much more useful to you in every way. Why you bastard? Yu Ning shouted in anger, yet she couldn't refute Jin Jemming's words. As the sect leader of the Holy Sword Academy, an esteemed sect that once rivaled the Immortal Monastery in their primes during the Primordial Era, he held authority and resources far surpassing Yu Ning's. However, Yuan spoke with a cold grin on his face. Do you normally restrict the movements of the person you're asking for help? Hearing such words, Jin Jemming released his pressure on Yuan but kept it on Yu Ning, as he didn't want to give her the chance to run into the soul weapon. My apologies, it wasn't my intention. I don't usually panic, but even a god would lose some senses after spending so much time in this gloomy place. Yuan didn't immediately respond and pondered his next step. While he had no intention of helping Jin Jemming, he couldn't simply refuse to help him, as Jin Jemming would definitely attack him, and he wasn't close to being strong enough to oppose someone at God Ascension even with evil god's memories. In fact, even if he worked together with Yu Ning and Ji Ran, they wouldn't be able to defeat Jin Jemming. Yuan. Yu Ning looked at him with a look of acceptance, almost as if she'd given up on leaving with him. You should take him. I'll stay here for now. If one of them leaves their soul weapon in the future and you don't mind returning for me, I will be eternally grateful. Yu Ning recognized the gravity of their circumstances. Jin Jemming wielded enough power to effortlessly annihilate them all, so she decided to stay behind. In doing so, she would, at the very least, still have a chance to leave the Shadow Realm in the future. Looks like I will owe you a favor now, Fairy Yu. Jin Jemming smiled. In response, Yu Ning merely snorted coldly. However, a moment later, to their surprise, Yuan shook his head and said, No, I won't let you stay behind. I said I'd take you out of this place, so I will. What? But, before Yu Ning could finish her sentence, Yuan continued, I didn't mention this before because it wasn't necessary, but I actually have 3 soul weapons in my possession. You what? The 3 immortals exclaimed in a shocked voice after learning of this information. Chapter 1444 Holy Sword Saint. Chapter 1444 Holy Sword Saint 1444 Holy Sword Saint, why you possess 3 soul weapons? No, that's impossible. Jin Jemming quickly expressed his doubt. After all, even the most talented cultivators during the Primordial Era had 2 soul weapons at the most. 3 was simply unheard of, even unimaginable. Why would I lie to you? Especially when this sort of lie can easily be exposed? Yuan shook his head. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and show us your 3rd soul weapon. Jin Jemming urged impatiently. Yuan nodded and retrieved his 3rd soul weapon, the Dragon's Soul. The moment the Dragon's Soul made its appearance, its presence permeated the surroundings with a profound aura, causing the souls of the immortals to quiver in awe and fear. What a powerful soul weapon! They cried inwardly. Let me dwell within that soul weapon. Jin Jemming hastily said as he pointed at the Dragon's Soul. Yuan casually nodded, sure. Jin Jemming sensed something was amiss, almost as though he'd gotten what he wanted too easily. However, when he reconsidered Yuan's weak cultivation base and their circumstances, Jin Jemming no longer pondered too deeply about it and nodded. But will you be able to handle 3 immortal souls at once? Yu Ning suddenly inquired in a worried tone. Moreover, Jin Jemming's soul would be the most strenuous on Yuan's soul strength due to his higher cultivation base. Yuan looked at Yu Ning with a calm smile and said, I might be weakened a little, but of course, it's no problem for me. Yuan retired the Empyrean Overlord, offered the Dragon's Soul to Jin Jemming, and said, Here you go, Senior. I'll let you go first if you're worried that I won't have enough soul strength to carry all 3 of you at once. Jin Jemming nodded and spoke as he flew into the Dragon's Soul, I will remember your act of kindness. Yuan felt about 20% of his soul strength being consumed. Yuan, you need to be careful of the Holy Sword Saint. He went astray during the war and became an evil cultivator who took advantage of the chaos to strengthen himself. Ji Ran suddenly warned him through divine sense. Yuan didn't respond and merely held a mysterious smile on his face. A moment after Jin Jemming entered the dragon's soul, his satisfied voice resounded. This place is much more spacious and luxurious than I'd expected. Heavens! I can even feel my soul strength growing stronger just by staying in here. Ha ha ha. This place is fucking amazing. The more I explore the W8. Who the hell are you? Jin Jemming suddenly became alert, his voice filled with surprise. You little bastard. This soul weapon is already occupied by another soul. How dare you trick me? Humph. Whatever. I simply need to destroy this soul and become its sole occupant. A different voice suddenly resounded. Not only did this bug invade my sanctuary, but it even dared to threaten me. Ha ha ha, the voices suddenly stopped. Yu Ning and Xian swallowed nervously as they waited for the results. A few moments later, W8. Please. Spare me. I will immediately leave this place. Jin Jemming's voice returned, but it was filled with shock and fear, sounding as though had encountered a ghost. Please. Have mercy. I was wrong. I was wrong. Yu Ning and Xian listened to Jin Jemming beg the mysterious soul with wide eyes filled with disbelief. Ah. Mother. Father. Someone. Save them, I will remember this, Tian. Dragon Goddess Yu's voice suddenly resounded with a displeased tone. Yuan wore a bittersweet smile on his face as he responded, I wasn't sure you were actually in there and saw the opportunity to find out, so I took my chances. Sorry, Dragon Goddess Xiu. Now that I've confirmed you are dwelling within the dragon's soul, why have you been ignoring me? However, there were no responses from Dragon Goddess Xiu. The silent treatment again, huh? Yuan sighed as he wondered what he was doing wrong. Unfortunately, he probably won't figure it out until he recovers more of the immortal monarch, Tian's memories. Ding. Dragon's Soul, Level 1, Rank, Soul Weapon, Growth Rate, Fast, Requirement. Unique Ability, Dragon's Roar lets out a resounding battle cry that shatters the surrounding spiritual energy. However, that was not the end. Ding. After devouring the soul of a god Ascension cultivator, the dragon's soul unsurprisingly leveled up twice in an instant. Unique Ability, Dragon's Sanctuary creates a domain around the wielder that seals all spiritual energy from those that do not have dragon blood. Does not affect the wielder. This dragon's soul is. Yuan swallowed nervously after seeing its overpowered unique abilities. However, its unique ability only applied to spiritual energy, so it might be ineffective against immortals who could wield immortal chi and celestial chi. Still, it was a very powerful ability that could surprise even immortals. As for those who cannot use immortal chi and do not have dragon blood flowing through their veins, they were simply screwed. Yuan reclaimed the dragon's soul and retired the Empyrean Overlord again. He looked at Yu Ning, who was still frozen from shock, and said, It's your turn. Yet, Yu Ning didn't fly into the Empyrean Overlord and stood there like a stone statue, her gaze fixated on Yuan's calm smile. Seeing this, Yuan chuckled and said, Don't worry, this soul weapon is definitely unoccupied. Nothing will happen to you. Why you promise? Yu Ning muttered in a timid voice. Of course. I only killed that guy because I knew of his character, he nodded. Jin Jemming was a renowned individual whose infamy reached even Tian Xian's ears, so he already knew of Jin Jemming's vicious character even before Jiran's warning. You're tuning in to the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.